Okay. Seeing none, let me go through a couple housekeeping items. There is an overflow room, E2014. If you are interested, we recognize that we have approaching 100 witnesses, 93. It's continuing to grow. And we appreciate, and we will listen and sit here and listen to anybody that wants to talk to us. And I would remind you to talk to us. We're not, and I've talked to my committee members about this, we're not here to create a fight or be antagonistic. We may disagree with your opinions along the way, but the men and women that serve in this committee and serve here candidly and deal with this issue care deeply about our children in Texas. And so everything we're trying to do is make the system better. And while you may not agree 100% with what the one thing that may be in the bill that you don't like, there's a lot of things that are in the bill that you should like, and that's really our goal. But before you testify, please register as one of the witness registration kiosks located in the hallway. If you need help, please ask committee staff and they will assist you. So, at the end of testimony tonight, which will be sometime this evening, I'm guessing, we will ask if people want to testify. Hopefully, though, you would have done that. I did note in some of these, we have people registering twice, some registering for, some registering against, some registering the same for and against at the same person, so I'm not really sure you can do that. You might be for some of the bill and against parts of it, so we have a place where it says on, which means that you are not either 100% for or 100% against it, but you would be like on the bill at that particular time. So keep that in mind. The witness affirmation form must be filled out completely and accurately, including your contact information, position on each bill for which you've registered. If your oral testimony does not match the position you have indicated for a particular bill, you were asked to confirm your position during your testimony and will edit your registration as needed. You may also use the witness registration system to register your position on a bill without actually testifying before the committee. In this situation, you should indicate do not wish to testify after you've indicated your position on a bill. If you have brought in written testimony, you still must register. You must also provide 15 copies of the material to the committee staff prior to the consideration. The materials must be clearly marked with the appropriate bill number, and committee staff will distribute the materials when that bill is up for consideration. When you are called to testify, you will have 2 minutes to address the committee. We have our little clock that's here. Green means go, yellow means caution, red means stop. If you have submitted written testimony, please don't read it to us. If you give us written testimony, assume for a second that we will read it. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like on the bill. We want to hear what you have to say, not what you're reading. While you're waiting to testify, please summarize your comments so they can be delivered within this time frame. When the timer light will be green, you will begin. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute remaining. When the light turns red, I would ask that you please show courtesy to the other 100 people that are standing behind you wanting to be able to talk. So those are kind of the issues of the day. Any other questions about that? Nope. Okay.
All right. The chair lays out House Bill 3 and recognizes Chairman Huberty to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Today, we are rolling out what we call House Bill 3, or as you may have seen it as called the Texas Plan. And we have our little hashtag, the time is now, to change this. As you all recall, as I noted in my opening comments, the Speaker has made this a #1 priority. And I'm going to kind of go through the high level, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail, and then I know that Chairman King may want to speak about some of the teacher pay issues, and maybe some of our rural friends might want to talk about some of the rural things that we've been working on, and et cetera, et cetera. So to start out, again, high level, this is invest in students and teachers. House Bill 3 invests students and teachers by adding over $9 billion in funding them to enrollment growth and current law entitlements. It does put money into the classroom because it empowers local school districts to put more money in their classroom by raising the basic allotment from $5,140 to $6,030, an $890 increase per student. It reduces recapture, provides property tax reform by lowering school property taxes at a compressed rate 4 cents across the board statewide, and reduces recapture payments by more than 38% this biennium. It focuses on early childhood education, establishes a program to fully fund pre-K for low-income students, targets money at schools with higher concentrations of underserved students, and provides funding for extended year summer instruction. It supports the teaching profession. For too long, we have not treated our teachers as professionals. Therefore, it invests billions of dollars in textroom teachers and classrooms, substantially increased the minimum salary schedule, provides an additional $140 million for recruiting and retaining teachers, and creates a grant program for training teachers to to effectively combine e-learning and traditional classroom instruction. House Bill 3 dedicates more money to research-based programs proven advanced achievements such as dual language immersion, dyslexia identification, expands career and technology programs. We believe this is a more equitable plan across the board. It also gives the districts the ability to earn and keep money from their own local property taxes. It allows a grant program, to utilize additional services for children with learning disabilities, i.e. we're creating a tutoring program for outside of the classroom. It updates the transportation funding model, which creates a simplified $1 per mile reimbursement and quadruples the allocation for building new equipment through the NIFA funding to over $100 million a year. When we look at the current law and we think about the basic allotment that's in place right now, one of the things that we identified structurally that's wrong with the system today, we have 422 school districts that are at $1.17, the maximum cap that we have out there. By looking at, when we talked about the commission report as we continue to went forward, we looked at ways, how do we make this so that we can have recapture reduced, how do we find ways to reduce property tax across the board, but how do we help these school districts so that they have capacity issues. Therefore, we increased and we tied the golden pennies, the basic allotment, to 160% of the basic allotment, or $96.48. In addition, we added 2 additional pennies of golden pennies relief. These are very important to Chapter 41 school districts, recapture districts like Mr. Meyer's district, of which one of those pennies we gave as the board vote. The board can vote to have that penny without having to go out to do a TRE. In addition to that, by the way, we did that in the second year of the biennium, not the first, and we can talk about that. In addition, we increased the basic allotment on the copper pennies to be tied to 80% of the basic allotment, $48.24. Under current law, it's in statute at $31.95. Last time it was adjusted in 2006. So automatically compresses the tax rate as we continue to go forward. There's been a lot of discussion about compressions of tax rates as we're continuing to work through the governor and with the governor's staff and the speaker's staff and lieutenant governor's staff on where's the sweet spot of where do we land on there. But I think it's important to note that we do compress taxes under this bill by 4 cents across the board. So the current yield of $1 on the Tier 1 goes from $1 to 96 cents. If you compress below that, you will get compressed below that as well. So it's $2.7 billion of tax compression. And so the average state gain in ADA is $584 in 2020 and $596 in ADA gain in 2021. As I mentioned, the recapture is down significantly, but it's down $3 billion from $7.7 billion to $4.7. And under the current law, the state average for M&O tax rate in 2020 is projected to be $1.10 per $100 valuation. House Bill 3 reduces this to $1.04. This is real tax relief, real tax relief. So when you think about the amount of districts that are impacted from the 2020 school year, there's 1,136 school districts, or 94%, representing 5,076,000 students, or 99.1% of all DA, gain $3 billion. There are 69 districts and charters representing 44,328 students in ADA that lose $10.8 million. We're still working on that, obviously. I mentioned the provisions. Let me highlight some other quick provisions. One is changes to the state comp end rate. We go from 0.2 to 0.225 to 275, and we're changing that to be based on PEIMS economically disadvantaged student socioeconomic status classification models. Going back and just using the free and reduced lunch, as we know, just does not work. We do create a dyslexia allotment for the first time ever of 0.1. We've been identifying how many dyslexic students that are out there, and what's very alarming about that is I think the state average that we're identifying is about 2.75%, where the national average is somewhere between 12 and 15% for dyslexic students. The blended learning program we think is pretty exciting because blended learning is kind of a new way to be teaching that's out there. There's a lot of Teach for America academies and things that are doing that. But we have to be able to train our teachers to be able to do that. We created a dual language immersion allotment for ELL and native English speaking students, and I know Representative Bernal may want to speak about that. We also created the teacher quality allotment to retain and recruit quality teachers and substantially raise the minimum salary schedule, as I had mentioned. That's very important because it also impacts TRS. Anytime you impact that, you're dealing with TRS and the pensions that are associated with that. Part of this plan is not, there's other programs that are out there. Our plan, the House's ideas and concepts, and certainly we're going to be working with our colleagues on the Senate side, but our concept is creating a package, and we've looked at ways to help active care, shore up the pension retirement system, which Dr. Bonin is working on that, and certainly look at increases in the minimum salary schedule and increases in the basic allotment. So those are all important things. One of the exciting recommendations, and I mentioned this, was the extended year program allowing 30 days of half-day instruction in summer students to help with the summer slide. We think that that is very important, especially for our urban school districts that have children that go backwards significantly during the summertime. We also fund the career and technology allotment. It's down to the 6th grade now. So those are really kind of important things, I think, as we go forward throughout this process. There was a tremendous amount of changing around of allotments that went through this process. And while I don't want to get into every single detail, and I know that there's things like the high school allotment that we repealed, the cost of education index we repealed, and I've heard from, just like many of you heard from your school districts, that we're actually doing well under CEI. But there's many districts like Austin that we're not doing well under CEI. And there's going to be people lobbying to keep CEI in place. The problem is that from 1990 until now, we've never adjusted it, so we've never taken that into consideration. And I think that many of us had heard through the process of the testimony through the commission, and certainly testimony that we've heard here, is that the legislature just hasn't dealt with it, hasn't had the appetite to do it. So why put something in place that would require them to update that as they continue to go forward? I would think that it's better to put it in the basic allotment. It creates more equity within the system. There was a couple recommendations, one of which was to go to current year values. When we looked at that, even though we talked to the controller's office and we talked to the governor's office and speaker's office, we went through that whole process. We did make the decision to not do that at this particular time. There is in statute today, we just have to fund it to make sure, and we do have it funded right now. So in places where, like Representative King represents high mineral oil rights, where you have diminished property values. In past years, we hadn't been funding that. Right now, I think we've got $37.5 million that'll go in to help those school districts as we go forward. We did repeal the 92-93 hold harmless. However, we made sure that we put a sliding scale on that, and there is a sunset as that goes forward over a 5-year period of time for us to be able to deal with that as we go forward. The important thing is that as we've seen over the years, the state and local share of the SFP entitlement in 2014 was 45.1%. If we do nothing by 2021, it'll go down to 34.6%. Under this plan, we go back up to 41.1%. While it's not, back to where it was, I mean, obviously the costs has continued to grow. And I remind you that this plan is in addition to the $2 billion of enrollment growth that was already put into the plan as we go forward. This is a true plan. This is concepts and identified out of the School Finance Commission. These are recommendations. Now, not every single recommendation is in here. We did put the Career College Military Readiness framework in place, but we did not put the bonuses in place. That would come in the second biennium, or the next legislative session would have to be funded. We did hear some concerns and pushback specifically about bonuses for third grade reading. That was one of the things that we have talked about, that while we heard testimony last week related to STAR and things of that nature that were happening, that there's some concerns about STAR, and we will dig into that, make sure that we resolve that problem. I think everybody on this panel can agree that we have a problem with third grade reading, and we pick a percentage, but it's greater than 30% of these children that need help. And there was pushback from within the variety of different communities that didn't want it to be tied to STAR, and so we got language from groups like Raise Your Hand Texas that we agreed to put in the bill. We've softened that language a little bit more. There's nothing that's there that's tied to that, and they were concerned about bonus money for theirs. So candidly, what we did is we just took the money out. It was $400 million. There was so much pushback on that, we just took the money out. I've heard some pushback on the teacher quality allotment. And we want to be able to talk about that. We met with a variety of the teacher groups. I'm sure you have too. And I think our position is that we think that there's a lot of teachers that would be excited about finding ways to be incentivized to go teach in tougher areas and tougher schools, and to be able to have that opportunity to be able to do it. And we're going to continue to work hard with them to find a solution that makes sense. In addition to the increase in the minimum salary schedule and some other things. We did not put an across-the-board pay raise in this plan. That was not a recommendation from the commission. Not suggesting one way or the other, but I remind you that we've got $6.3 billion going into the plan right now. But our plan is to continue to work with everybody, including the Senate, to come up with an end game where it's at. I remind everybody this is March, and we've got some time to get to where we want to go. So with that, I'll pause to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Members, any questions for the Chairman now? All right, we'll probably save them for later. We'll start taking public testimony now.
Go ahead.
And our first witness. All right, we'll start with Ysleta Williams. And if at any point we mispronounce someone's name, please correct us.
I'm so sorry.
And what we'll ask of you, ma'am, and everyone else is to state your name, your position on the bill, if you're representing anybody.
Not a problem.
And thank you for being here.
Right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Ysleta Williams, and I I'm for the bill.
Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Ysleta Williams. I am a department chair, and I am a chemistry teacher that teaches in Houston, and I'm also with the group Teach Plus. I'm in that policy fellowship group, and I've been a teacher for 13 years, and so I've taught in Amarillo, Texas, and now I'm in Houston, and making sure that extra money for students in high needs area is something that needs to be on the very top of y'all's priority list. I'm glad that that is with the HB3 and includes significant funding for high needs students, especially those living in concentrated poverty. I've seen that impact insufficient funding firsthand, especially like in my classroom. We do not have enough stools. They're falling apart in my classroom. There's no supplies for labs and to do any labs, and I have huge class sizes. So in one of my chemistry classes, I teach pre-AP chemistry. We have 38 kids, and so my students have to get stools from another classroom, and we have to share back and forth so that my students can actually fit into the classroom. And so that doesn't even happen in a class in schools just down the street from mine. And it's an affluent school. And the other thing, too, is I had a student named Layla. She was living in unlivable conditions. So just being at the school was just like her safe haven. And when she just didn't want to go home. So she lived on the south side of Houston and for her whole life. And she would basically, for her to just get to know different parts of Houston, me and other teachers used our money to take them on field trips. And we would take her to the Museum of Natural Science, NASA, Fine Arts, everything. And that's how we encouraged her to even get scholarships. And I'm proud to say she got the Gates Millennium Scholarship.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Meredith Austin. Hi there.
She's registered for and against. Can you get her to clarify?
Okay, and so, Ms. Austin, we have you on record as being both for and against.
Or I had spoken with the clerk earlier. I misregistered the first time. I'm for the bill.
Okay, thank you. We'll correct it on the record.
Just want to make sure we're clear there.
No, it's all good.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Dr. Meredith Austin, and I'm a district level administrator. Though I'm speaking on my own behalf here. Additionally, I am a constituent of Chairman Huberty, so thank you very much for your leadership and the immense amount of work that I know a bill like this takes. Okay. Additionally, I hold a doctorate of education, and I would like to speak with you today as a classroom teacher. I've been in the past a campus leader, a district level administrator, and as a researcher. As beneficial and effective as HB3 looks to be, specific funding for gifted education or for gifted children must remain in the state education code. And here are the following reasons. Number one, gifted students are a special population. And number two, the gifted students of today are not those of the past decades. While there are still unacceptable disparities in children that are identified, these gaps are narrowing, and this takes money and expertise. Number three, gifted education is not a privileging of the already privileged. Number 4, Texas's brightest students have made little progress as compared to the average learner, something that's known as the excellence gap. This excellence gap is greater for our low socioeconomic, minoritized, and twice exceptional children. Gifted students are already underserved in Texas schools. The GT allotment is not a burden on districts or campuses, but having to certify and ensure that they meet whatever the new program requirement is for a gifted program will be a burden. It cannot come down to the discretion of a district or a campus of how to fund gifted education. Gifted education will lose every time. Number 9, money talks and money is power. And because campuses do not see the return on investment, they will not invest in their brightest students. And finally, number 10, in this era of testing and accountability, gifted kids have given campuses what they needed, good test scores. But gifted students have gone without what they've needed, and that's the opportunity to learn something new every day. And I would like to close with a final appeal. Please do not repeal the GT allotment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Chairman Huberty.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Wilson. You know, full disclosure, we talked on the phone. You were upset. I get it. Here's my question, which is, we are not repealing anything in statute that requires school districts to do that. And one of the reasons that we did this, it was like the high school allotment. We have a high school allotment that just everybody gets it. Mm-hmm. So we said, that is the same premise of the gifted and talented, which is capped at 5%, and so every school district across the state of Texas is getting 5%. So we took the money and put it into the basic allotment, and statutorily it's required. So it's, you know, our thought process is that you got to count the students, you got to go through this. It's additional work that is not required. So I guess, what is your in your district per se? What is the amount of students that are in the program right now?
We have just over 3,000.
Okay, and as a percentage of the population of students, it represents what?
A little over, about 7.5%.
7.5%. So we're given the entire 5%. So theory, if you were really funding it correctly, it would be 7.5% for your district, right?
Correct.
But we're seeing it across the board at 5%. So we took that allocation, just took it into the basic allotment. Is that not? Will that not work?
Well, when I see it being repealed, I'm seeing that the weight of how you give worth to your gifted children is being taken out. Right now, they're worth 12% basically, and we can only count 5% of those within each district. And so that's what I'm seeing happening, and that's what concerns me.
I don't understand the 12%. Help me with that.
Because they were weighted with the 1.12.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay.
So, and that's what I'm seeing there.
So, but again, if everybody's getting the 5%, so you just want it to be out there to say, well, Mr. School District or whatever it is, even though you have 7%, we're going to give you the 5%, and we put it in the basic allotment, but you want it to just be a standalone weight that's out there, or a standalone allotment is what you're suggesting.
Right. I mean, honestly, I think we should be able to, I think 5% is too low for the district to be able to claim. However, it needs to be in there, and it needs to be in writing for much of additionally what I said, because without it being tied to the actual funding, I don't see it happening to fidelity. And I've had experience in many other districts and within my research that it won't be done to fidelity without there being something tied to it.
So you're saying that if I said to the school district, this particular allotment, I'm not going to give you money for the GT program, that they just won't teach those kids anymore?
I don't think it'll be taught necessarily to fidelity. And like with the example you had mentioned earlier with the dyslexia allotment, you know, Texas right now does not have the number of students identified dyslexic that they probably should. And a lot of that has to do with this lack of funding. And so that is kind of the inverse of what I feel like is going to happen when you remove the GT allotment, is then, you know, districts aren't going to want to, you know, properly identify. They're not going to do what they need to do for the gifted education.
But we did put the money in, and when we put the money in under this change, it was the money that was used for that program specifically for this. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this now, but under the education code right now, that if you aren't, it's going to be new in the bill, rather, excuse me,
okay,
in this will require, if they don't do this, meaning if they don't do that, we can then take the money back. So we wrote that into the bill very specifically for these particular reasons, to make sure that that money was spent in a very particular way, and it's tied to dual language and other things that are out there. But it also applies to math and everything else that's out there. I mean, we're trying to simplify the process and the formulas. I mean, that was really kind of our goal, is to be able to do that. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that it's section 2.012. I'm going to read it to you. Districts required to certify programs are being provided, and the funding will be taken back if not. So let's look at that, and we're happy to take other suggestions about how to fix this as we go forward, but I want to make sure everybody knows that we did think about that as we went forward.
Right, and I know that is something that we haven't been able to see in the bill. What are we certifying as a quality gifted program? What my concern is that it's going to go to boxes that are having to be checked instead of meeting the needs of the students, how they need to be met.
Yeah,
they have special needs.
And I think what I'm trying to get to is that we want to be very careful as we go forward through this process, because I'm going to hear from people that are going to talk about CEI, how you can't repeal that. I'm going to hear from people who are going to talk about the high school allotment, how you can't repeal that. I'm going to hear from people who say you can't repeal this program, you can't do this, you can't do this, you cannot do all these other things. This is changing the entirety of the system, right? And sometimes it's difficult. If for some reason that this isn't being done correctly, meaning in the bill as we put it out, then we'll certainly take a look at it and figure out how do we address this as we go forward. We thought we had the language that was very clear on that. I mean, that the expectation is that based on the money that's going in, that those kids that will be taken care of, for those kids. Mm-hmm. So I guess, and let me ask you one last question. So under current law, you in your particular district have 7.5% of the kids identified as gifted and talented. We're only giving you the 5%. So the additional 2.5% that's there, that's above, that's not being funded, are they not being taught in the same way as the first 5%?
I definitely believe that we aren't able to do the type of identification methods that I would like to do. Working with the budget and seeing things, I definitely know that our campuses should be getting more, could be getting more, and if I might add, with the allotments, I know we're trying to clean these up with the high school, the CEI. However, the GT allotment is a special population of students. They are a group of students with special needs, and that's where I do see a difference there. I understand we don't want we're trying to clean all of this up, but this is a group of students who have special needs, and the weight, basically their weight is being taken.
Well, so. It's not, because it's $20 that went into the basic allotment. So this is what I would do. I'm just telling you what the numbers would be. If we get to a point where people want to start I'm going to start taking money away from the basic allotment. That's the only way it works. And so, when you start doing that, though, you start looking at disparity and equity and all these other things that we've been trying to fix for the last several years. So it's not the weight goes back in and things don't get changed, because it's going to start changing as we go forward. And the problem is that as we look at this, and when you start changing basic allotment, it hurts recapture, it hurts everything else that we do. I'm just one vote on the committee here, so we'll get there, but but we'll get there. So, anyways, I got it. So if we got language, we'll look at it. There's more language. I just want everybody to make sure, because I know there's other people coming to talk about GT, and I wanted to get this out of the way early.
I appreciate and thank you to the committee for all the work you've put into this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Representative Salarico.
I had a question for Chairman Huberty about the section you mentioned earlier. Can you repeat the section you were?
2.012. I'm going to pass you the note.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Next, we have Sakenia Reed.
And you might want to warn the next few people, because the overflow is far away.
And you will be followed by Jason Jones. Hi there.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Sakina Reed, and I'm a proud 7th grade English and Language Arts distinguished teacher from the Barack Obama Male Leadership Academy in Dallas ISD, and a Teach Plus Policy Fellow. I am here to testify in support of House Bill 3. At the beginning of every school year, I give my students a questionnaire which asks about their favorite book or genre of literature. One particular student, Jason, stands out to me because he reported that he didn't like to read. It was difficult for him, and he has failed all of his STAR reading tests. After a diagnostic and one-to-one conferencing about his educational background, I realized Jason's family at the time had only been living in the U.S. for 5 years. And when he took his 3rd grade reading STAR, he'd only been enrolled in school for 2. Because of this, he had low self-esteem, and it became my responsibility as his teacher to close that reading gap for him. So then began the work of raising Jason's reading level, comprehension, and confidence. We spent hours on Achieve 3000 and reading a particular novel, Reaching Out by Francisco Jimenez. It's a memoir detailing the life of the son of Mexican immigrants as he navigated his college years at the University of Santa Clara in 1962. In Francisco, Jason finally saw himself in a book. After a lot of hard work and changing Jason's mindset, I'm proud to say that Jason received an 82% on his 7th grade reading STAR exam, and his Lexile reading at the end of the year was at a 6th grade level. As you can tell, I'm very proud of him, but I often think about how much farther along Jason would be if he had started school in pre-K, or if his pre-K through 3rd grade teachers could have had more instruction on financial support. Jason and many students just like him are the reason that I support House Bill 3 and its intention to focus resources on early education to increase 3rd grade reading levels. The investment in professional development for teachers, additional instructional time, screening tools like Achieve 3000, and effective instructional support to educators that implements rigorous literacy strategies in the classroom is definitely worth it. I also support an effective educator allotment for multi-measure evaluation systems that provide adequate compensation for our best teachers based on effective teaching defined through teacher performance, student perceptions, and student achievement. This system places a premium on results and rewards teachers accordingly. It also supports the recruitment and retention of highly motivated and effective teachers. I thank you for your leadership on House Bill 3 because it provides the necessary support for students like Jason who need it most. It also rewards effective teachers like myself who are able to help close the achievement gap.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Members, any questions? Chairman King.
Thank you, Ms. Reed, for being here. I appreciate your testimony. We worked a lot on the teacher pay portion of House Bill 3, and you kind of brushed over it a little bit, but I thought I heard you say you were in support of the proposal.
Absolutely.
Could you elaborate a little bit of that? Because we spent a lot of time on the School Finance Commission and in this committee over the last years trying to come up with a plan that works not only for the inner city but for rural Texas as well. And we've had some complaints, but I'm really intrigued because you are an educator to hear your take on it.
Yes. So my take on the teacher pay and the compensation part. I know there may be a few loopholes. I'm quite pleased with it. I think there is opportunity for teachers even outside of those tested subject areas to receive the compensation, and so I'm appreciative of that when we're discussing student achievement and student growth. Even if you don't have a tested subject area, you can show your growth through your beginning of the year assessments and your end of the year assessments. There's now specific language to contributions to the profession, student surveys that ask specific questions that I think are holistic, not just is your teacher a good teacher, but if you see them 5 years from now, will they remember who you are? And so I think that because of that accountability and that intentionality that's there, you have this system that really lets effective teachers be present and demonstrates that. And did I answer your question?
You did. I've got one more.
Yes.
If that's okay. Because one of the biggest components of the bill, of that part of the bill, to me is I've seen this legislative body back when I was on the school board and do different kind of incentives, and it's always a grant and they go away and stuff. We purposely designed this to put it in statute, and I hope the education community understands what that means. Basically, this is a guarantee. This is something the legislature has never done. We're putting it in statute, so it means that somebody else would have to file a bill in another legislative session to undo what we're guaranteeing we're going to do for the education community. And okay. I hope that gives you some comfort as an educator that this legislative body, anyway, as Chairman Huberty said at the beginning of this, we want to promote your job as a profession. We don't want you to feel like you're in a job anymore. We want to put the professionalism back in it, and that was the whole point of putting it in statute. Did you understand that piece of it?
I understand it a lot better now, and I understand it a lot better now, but I think that when I think about how it's tiered in the multi-measure system, those systems are in place. I just think it has to be communicated to teachers and administrators and departments. I think just the weights, that part might be a little bit confusing for some people, but I think you're absolutely right. I think it does show that professionalism that teachers have, and I think teachers in Texas have that. And so I'm just thankful that we have the opportunity to show that now.
Well, Ms. Reed, thank you for being here.
Thank you
I
so
appreciate
much.
your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You're still in the hot seat.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Representative Salarico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Reed, for your service.
Thank you.
Were you in Dallas ISD before TEI was implemented?
I was not.
Okay.
I was not.
So then my second question is, what is the reaction to that evaluation system amongst other teachers on your campus? Is it considered controversial? Is it divisive?
May I speak candidly?
Sure, of course. Please do.
It's just all of us.
You know, just everybody in recording. You know, for the most part, I think teachers have the buy-in. For the most part, I believe that teachers are excited and willing to show not just student achievement, but student growth. I think that's an important part that sometimes we don't talk about enough. I will say, though, the only two things I think I've heard on my staff and amongst my teacher friends that might be a little bit concerning are the student surveys. I think that sometimes your stricter teachers, if you will, don't always receive those points that they'd like. However, I do think that the wording on the student surveys, and I know I'm not supposed to exactly know what questions they ask them, but it does say, will your teacher remember you? Is from the information that your teacher is giving you instructionally, does that relate to the real world? And so I think it's gotten past the do you just like your teacher, and it's not about a popularity contest, but it's about their effectiveness holistically. Do they care about you? Those parts of being a teacher, when you're teaching the heart and the character and integrity part of teaching outside of just the intellectual part of it. And I think that part, and there was one more, sustainability. I know there's a big jump between proficient level 3 in pay and then exemplary 1 in pay. It goes from $65,000 to $75,000, and amongst a lot of teacher friends of mine, everyone got 69 points. And the question was raised, well, is it that they couldn't afford to pay everyone $75,000, or did everyone get right smack dab at 69? So it was a little questionable. Most of us got raises though, so no one complained about that. But that's the only part for myself and my campus and my teacher friends that I've heard for me.
I'm, like you, very excited about the possibilities with this educator effectiveness allotment, and particularly with student surveys. I love the idea of empowering our students and their voice.
Do
I had a group in my office yesterday brought up some concerns that there's possibly some research out there that women and people of color in the classroom as teachers are underrated in these student surveys. Has there been any talk of that on your campus or in the district that you've heard of?
That's interesting. I have not heard any of that yet. It hasn't been raised on my campus. I work at an all-male academy. Sure. There's lots of female teachers. I haven't heard that. Okay. Hasn't been anything that's come up for me.
No, that's helpful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
All right. Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. All right. Jason Jones, you're up next. And you'll be followed by Emily Yamar Robbins.
Jason Jones, Superintendent of McMullen County ISD. Right now, we are currently against the bill. We are one of the 60-plus schools going to be losing money. And the reasoning is quite simple. We're at 99 cents. And you compress me. He went to his book. You compress me. If you compress me 4 cents, I'm going to lose somewhere between 400 and 500,000. So my suggestion, or what would help us and possibly the other 60-plus schools, is to let us have the 2 pennies next year. Give us access to those, or let us keep a little bit more in recapture to help offset our loss. I do feel wholeheartedly that the committee is for making sure everybody comes out a winner in this. It was good to hear Representative Huberty say that they were going to work on the 60-plus schools. That means a lot to us. Go ahead.
can I ask a question?
Chairman.
Where are y'all located?
South of San Antonio.
Oil and gas?
Yes, sir.
Eagle Ford Shale?
Yes, sir.
Clearly. Yeah, listen to this. His current M&O is $26 million. Current state aid law is $85 million. He gets to pay us back $21 million in recapture. He loses $1,700 a student. You're a small district.
Yes, sir.
240 kids.
Yes, sir.
We'll figure out a way to make it work.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly not what it was, but you would, under current law, that you would have written a check for $21 million.
Correct.
Next year,
Correct.
anyway. So your issue was more is certainly a similar problem, which is you got a huge recapture issue, anyways, going on.
Yes, we pay quite a bit back, and
Okay.
we've been doing that for several years. So it only makes sense for us to have a 99-cent tax rate. Otherwise, over the past 9 years, we'd have sent $50 more million back
Now,
to the state.
are you taking? Have you accessed all your golden pennies?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
but
so
we're getting ready to lose them.
you were compressed below
Yeah,
we're at
we're at 93 cents compressed rate.
Okay, and then plus your golden pennies.
Yes, sir.
So you took all six. You
Yes,
got
sir.
all those. So your point is, what does each penny mean for you?
Next year, it's going to mean roughly $245,000. So if you give me both golden pennies next year, I'll break even plus come out about $80,000 ahead.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, members, any other questions? Yeah. All right, well, sir, thanks for
Thank you.
stopping by.
We'll fix it.
All right. Emily VMR Robbins, followed by Doug Williams. And if I mispronounce your names,
You're great, thank you.
all right.
Thank you very much for your work for Texas students. I support much of House Bill 3, but I'm here with a strong concern. I'm here in part because my older son, has 2 disabilities. He entered kindergarten eager to learn, but that changed. He went from happy and motivated to being afraid to go to school by 2nd grade. He stopped doing his work, he disengaged, he was disciplined, and his grades plummeted, along with his self-esteem. His regular classroom teacher could not see his needs. The only place his abilities were seen was in his GT program, and that's the main reason I'm here. You see, my son is called twice exceptional. That means he has disabilities, but he was also diagnosed with gifted level abilities years above his grade. The one place that he thrived was in the GT program. Fortunately, in our district, trained GT educators were able to understand the problem. Through GT interventions, they were able to reverse his underachievement, and they could restore his motivation. He needed disability accommodations, but in his case, he could not succeed without support for his gifted abilities through GT services and acceleration. He is now in 7th grade taking 9th grade geometry, and he received state recognition for the PSAT last year. GT services made it possible for him to learn, and they were funded by the GT allotment. Children like mine exist in diverse populations and at all income levels. When GT needs are not met, these students are at risk for negative outcomes, including dropping out. This is especially true of gifted students who are economically disadvantaged or have disabilities. These services are not a privilege. They're evidence-based interventions. They saved my son's future. If the GT allotment is repealed, while all districts should prioritize gifted education for children like my son, not all will do so because this is a misunderstood population. House Bill 3 recognizes that other special populations need allotments. GT is a special population and a special need, and it requires a funded mandate. I ask you to listen to the GT educators and the GT experts here, and please do not harm children like mine. Please preserve the GT allotment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Members, any questions? Representative Meyer.
Good morning, Emelina. You and I have obviously met before.
Yes, hi.
Thank you. And great to see you here, and I appreciate you coming before the committee to testify, as we all do. Appreciate folks, coming from Dallas, as I know you did. You heard the exchange earlier today between Chairman Huberty. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, does that, provide you some comfort in what the committee was thinking? Please let us know your thoughts.
No, because the penalty for the certification requirement doesn't require that any minimum funds be spent on gifted education. So the way that the House Bill 3 reads now is a district, if it did not prioritize GT education, if it didn't have that understanding, because it's so misunderstood, they would be free to drop their funding, and they could cut their funding below what it is now, and we can't afford that. As you've heard before, we're already struggling. The funding that we have now is a minimum, but at least we have that minimum. And if it were cut further down, as House Bill 3 would allow, it would hurt our population. And the fact that GT coordinators in our district and GT coordinators and GT specialists in my district were able to help my son is because because the funds are there to make sure those people are there, the staff is there, and we can't allow that to happen. We can't allow those people to be cut.
So if we don't think that there's an actual allotment, you don't feel the school districts themselves will step up and realize they've got a gifted and talented population they need to take care of? Is that the concern, or they will divert the funds elsewhere?
Exactly. Some will spend enough, but some districts will not, and we know that from other states. TAGT leadership has information and research on other states where that's occurred, and we know that when funds are cut, when funds are tight, GT is one of the first things to get cut.
Very good. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate
Thank you, Representative Chairman Huberty.
Yeah. So thank you. I want to go through. I hear what you're saying, but I want to read this so you understand. And I don't know if you understand this. Current statute, current law on the 5%, you only have to spend 55% on those kids. If you're aware of that, that's current law. We changed the new law, and we'll read this to make sure that if you, I don't know if you've read this or not.
I have.
Okay. I want everybody to understand. Each school district shall annually certify to the commissioner that the district has established a program for gifted, talented students as required by the subchapter. If the commissioner determines that a school district has failed to comply with subsection A for a school year, which is what I just read to you, the commissioner shall reduce the total amount of funding to which the district is entitled under Chapter 48 for that school year by an amount equal to the basic allotment multiplied by the product of .12
Yes.
and an amount equal to 5% of the students in average daily attendance. The commissioner may restore to a school district all or part of the funding withheld from the district's entitlement under subsection B if during the school year the district complies with the subsection. The point was, it's there. We put it in let me finish. We put it in statute. Right now, under current law, if they're not providing it, we take 100% of those weightings away. Meaning now what we're saying to them is we expect you to take care of this population of students. And what we're saying is that if you don't, then your funding is going to be taken away, and we're going to look at that, associated with that, because we put the funding into the basic allotment.
May I respond?
Of course.
So the current allotment statute requires that the certification requirements currently in subsection A of the current allotment statute. And so in order to receive their funds, districts currently have to make that certification, and they have to comply with all of Chapter 29. The way that the penalty and the provision in House Bill 3 reads is all it requires is for districts to certify that they have a program. And it does not require a certain minimum funding, and the minimum funding is what districts so desperately need to make sure that these funds are not diverted elsewhere. Just simply having a program is not enough. It doesn't guarantee the quality of program, and it doesn't guarantee that there will be enough funds for the staff that are needed to meet misunderstood children like my child. My child is the profile of a child who's hard to identify. His needs are hard to see, and you need enough staff. You can't just have if you cut back your programs, there won't be the staff to see children like mine and help them.
So again, I want to make sure I understand your testimony, and this is obviously we're going to work through this as we go forward, and I understand your frustration. My frustration level is when people come talk to us about, number one, stop mandating we do things here from Austin to school districts, right?
Yes.
We hear that all the time. And don't tell us how to spend money. Don't mandate us. Get rid of all the mandates and all the other things that go with it. And we put this in statute the way that we did this is we took it, and again, it was through tons of testimony that we heard, right? And when we had the testimony on the commission and we went forward on this, we said, the 5%, that's everybody just has it. No, well, if they're not providing services to somebody else, then so be it, because that's all we're just going to take them, whatever it's going to be. What you're saying is that if I don't mandate or give them the allotment, then they won't teach those kids or identify those kids.
Absolutely, and I would ask you not to take my word for it, but to speak to the GT experts and TAGT leadership, because they have information on how this works, district to district and in other states, and what happens in practice.
I want to make sure we're clear.
Yes.
What you're saying to me and what you're saying to everybody here is that I don't know what school district you go to, but if we get rid of this allotment, that school district will automatically get rid of their GT program.
My district, I don't believe that will happen, but there are districts that would cut that funding, and that's the concern, that over time, if funds are tight.
But if they cut, listen though, but if they cut it, if they go backwards on their word, again, we put it in the basic allotment, they have to certify that they're providing the program under the current statute, under the current laws, under what the GT program is required, right? Then they would lose their funding associated with that. Isn't that an incentive for them to keep their program?
There's a difference between having a gifted education program and having a quality gifted education program. The state plan for gifted education allows a significant amount of local control.
I'll change this. I'm making sure it's a high quality program.
My request again would be to have a funded mandate for this, just like there are for other special populations. We need a funded mandate because this is truly a special population, and there is great overlap between this population and students with disabilities.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Ma'am, thank you very much. All right. Next, we have. I need this. Minor technical difficulty. Okay, so we have Doug Williams, and then you'll be followed by Justin Vaughter.
Good morning, committee. My name is Doug Williams. I'm superintendent with Sunnyvale ISD, and I also serve as the chairman of the Texas Association of School Administrators Legislative Committee. I'm here this morning testifying in strong support of House Bill 3. Like many, the first thing that I wanted to do when this legislation was rolled out, I wanted to see how it impacted Sunnyvale ISD. And I will tell you that we are receiving less dollars per student than what would be considered the average. However, I am here today in strong support of this because I believe this is the right thing at the right time for the students of Texas. All 5.4 million of them can be impacted positively by this legislation. It addresses long-requested and long-needed school finance reform, and it provides significant additional revenue for schools and, most importantly, our kids. If you go back and you look at Texas history, the Gilmer-Aiken Law in 1949 created a drastic and significant and needed change, and I believe House Bill 3 can be for the 21st century what Gilmer-Aiken was in the 1950s. There are many aspects that we can look at positively. We can discuss. Primarily, I would like to talk about the discretionary revenue in increasing the basic allotment to 60/30. That is a strong statement, and it also is the number itself is not lost because we do want to be 60 by 30, and we understand that. Couple items for consideration. I would ask that you look at the small and mid-size adjustment as it relates to special education programs. I feel like that is very significant, especially for those small schools and those mid-size that shared services arrangements just don't work. And then also look at the golden penny moving forward and somehow indexing that outside of the basic allotment. I believe that that's a very important. In summation, I'll say this. I believe that it's an appropriate name. It is the Texas Plan because this benefits all students in the state of Texas, and it helps us set the course for what we need to do going ahead. And I do agree with you that the time is now. Thank you for rolling this powerful legislation out, and I can answer any questions at this point.
Thank you very much. Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman and Chairman. And thank you for your testimony. I really do agree with you. There's so many beautiful parts of this plan, but I also have the same things that I would love to highlight. Specifically, and I think Representative King has also talked about this, not to speak for you, the small and mid-size adjustment and how while we realize this is important, I think it's specifically important for special education. So the small and mid-size allotment is about gosh, I need more coffee, everybody, for the universe out there. Oh, thank you, Chair.
We can solve that.
It's about the cost, the scale, right? And so special ed specifically, you've heard from, I guess, your members that this would be an impact, correct?
It would be, especially some of those small schools that are remote in nature, and sometimes when we can do shared services arrangements for special population, special programs, it makes sense, but sometimes it's just not feasible. And I know in our district where we are, that shared services arrangement is difficult just from the standpoint that we're a small school in an urban area.
Yeah, and the other part of for me is, so I appreciate that recommendation as well as the golden penny yield. I am excited that we are going to add those other two golden pennies. I think though if we look 5 years from now, have you done an analysis of looking at it 5 years from now and how not maybe tying it to a percentile or to another yield or inflation might cause some inequity?
You know, I have not done that analysis. One of the things that I would look at would be that possibly tie it maybe to something as such as the CPI, would be one suggestion. The other thing that I've talked about to the School Finance Commission was actually looking at property value per pupil, and as that goes up across the state, could the golden penny yield match that? But then again, I'm not here today to say anything other than the fact that this is strong legislation. So.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I think we all agree with that. I think, but making sure sometimes we don't want unintended consequences, specifically for me personally, the special education community.
Right.
And so, thank you for your testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Chairman Dutton, you're up.
I was just going to mention that the one of the most significant things that Gilmer-Aiken Act did in '49. Do you know what it was? It eliminated 6,000 school districts. I wasn't here then, but but I just want to remind you that.
Well, and I think one of and it did, but it really helped set the course for what modern day Texas education could be. And when you look at this, and, I've been in education 32 years and 20 years as a school administrator, and for 20 years we've talked about we need to fix the system, and this is definitely a move toward fixing that system.
And it's closer to a fix than we've ever had. Since
Yes,
I've
sir.
been here.
And it's a bold move, but by the way, tough questions sometimes take bold answers. So.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Representative Van Dever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a superintendent, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, as Chairman Huberty pointed out, this bill does not have across-the-board pay raises in it.
Right.
So, as a superintendent, how do you plan to handle pay raises for your teachers, for all of your staff?
So when you're talking about the magnitude of $6 billion, net after property tax relief, and when the numbers came out last week, I just wanted to try to do some long-range plan. I still operate as the CFO of our district, so I actually looked at what would those projections look like, and then I pared them back a little bit because I just want to be very conservative in the estimates. And so then in looking at the next biennium, what could we do in relation to teacher pay raise? So in looking at it, and by the way, we are probably going to have to do a TRE nonetheless, just from the standpoint of some costs that we're associated with opening the next campus, which, by the way, the NEFA allotment will definitely help us because we are a rapid growth district as well. But when we started looking at that, Representative Van Dever, what we did was we put a model in place that we said, if the TRE passes, what could we do? And then what would we be able to do in 2021? And the net effect for us is a 5.7% salary increase for our teachers over the next 2 years. And so 5.7% is what we're actually looking at. I'll present it to our board a week from Monday, so don't break that to them quite yet. But that, for a $50,000, which is about where our starting salary is for our teachers, that's right at $3,000 for the starting teachers.
So what about other staff?
And I think that's the other thing, is that we would be able to provide a pay increase for all of our staffs, not just our teachers, but our paraprofessionals. And you were a superintendent, so the first person that a school kid sees on a daily basis is the bus driver. And if they don't bring the kids to school well, there's not a negative, if there's not a positive experience, their kid's day starts wrong. In fact, we're having a hard time keeping bus drivers. So bus drivers and custodians and maintenance and everybody else that makes the school operate, this would give us the flexibility to be able to provide those continued raises for all personnel. But going back to the classroom, we understand that the most important person in providing that quality instruction is that teacher, and we want to make sure that we stay competitive with our teacher compensation. So that's going to be goal one for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, members, any other questions?
Let's go ahead,
Chairman King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was when you started your testimony and you brought up the small and mid-sized school allotment, and I think what Representative Gonzalez was getting at, that people who don't deal with it maybe don't understand that, it's the way it is currently, where it's compounded out through the formula. That's what you're saying, how you address your special ed needs, or, 'cause you don't know from one year to the next how many kids you're going to have in a certain program.
That's right.
Is that what you were getting at?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And, school district of 2,000, we can have 2 kids move into the district that would be, of high special need, that would actually cause us to have to add a personnel unit. And a personnel unit for us is substantial. We don't just have extra people kind of sitting around ready to be summoned from the bullpen, so to speak.
Well, there was, the original recommendation that came out was to do away with the out of the commission. There was talk of doing away with the allotment, and there was talk of just making it standalone or putting it at the end of the formula. But without the compounding effect, it doesn't meet that need you just described.
It wouldn't meet the need as well, no, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Well, I think, and Chairman Huberty and I have been over this, and I think the committee as a whole understands. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, you're the guy who has to implement this, and it comes better from you explaining it than just myself. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Huberty.
Thanks. Good to see you. So a couple things, you've heard, and we want to get this right, so I'm not picking on the GT allotment. You're superintendent, and I'm assuming you probably get 5% of the money.
We do.
And I don't know what your population of students are, but I'm assuming it's greater than 5%.
Substantially, yes, sir.
And so you educate those kids the same way you educate the first 5%.
We do.
And so we put the money in the basic allotment, which represents $20 a student. Is it from your perspective, will you continue to educate them based upon what we changed in the law, or help me understand that a little.
The mandate from my community calls for the fact that I'm going to educate our GT kids at a high level.
Yeah.
And that's unique. I don't know if it's unique for Sunnyvale ISD. The quick answer is it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that's again one of the priorities that our board has set, and we have our current GT programs in place. Could we expand them? Sure, we could expand them, and that's something that we'll look to do on an individual basis. But okay. I don't really foresee a change in law affecting the way our GT patterns would work. Now, it could be for some districts, and again, I call it financial prioritizing. When we lay everything out, and of course, each department, each director, and each principal establishes their own priority. But myself and the 7 board members that I work for, we're the ones that finally determine what.
Okay, and then my second follow-up, it's not really a question, more of a comment, which is I read and hear what Tass has talked about on the SDA and the MDA, and I've talked to Representative King and everything else. I actually got the number to put it exactly the way that we had it before, is $895 million for the biennium. That's what it will cost. So we'll have to, if ultimately that's where it goes, it's going to change a lot of different things. We are running the numbers on the SPED population, however, to see where that number falls out. It's just, we're going to have to make some choices along the way. Obviously, when you have, you would obviously, your district would get it, right? I'm assuming you're probably mid-size.
We're mid.
Yeah, you get the mid-size adjustment.
Right.
But when you get into the big suburban areas where they've had high CEIs and lost their CEIs and all the other things that go with them, it starts becoming really problematic for those districts. So it's going to be, and the bigger district, it's a push and pull, because whatever we take away, it's going to be an issue. Now, we didn't eliminate those allotments. We actually have them as standalones now, and we did that purposely out of the commission because it was, saying, hey, some districts just choose to be small, and I don't believe, and Representative King knows this, I'm certainly not picking on West Texas where the districts are so, big and large. It's the suburban, guys. And seriously, that's where the problem's at. That's where they ought to be, talking about, consolidation and things of that nature.
We probably won't. I would rather not have to work for David Brunlin and Mesquite. But
I understand.
But I will say this, when we understand that when you add to something, you take from something else. I will again emphasize, though, that school finance reform and the opportunity that we have to inject significant revenue into public education cannot be missed. And the time is now for us to do that, and we support your efforts.
Yeah. So look. I mean, I'm sharing this with the committee because I just literally got the number. So Leo has been typing away at it over there and figuring out. We're working on the SPED piece of it right now, and we'll get there and we'll run some numbers. We'll have some numbers in the next day or two on what that's going to cost, and we can tweak as we go forward. But I just want everybody to know. Love to try to solve that problem amongst ourselves right now versus getting it to the floor, because once it gets, once it hits the floor, and you start making those type of changes, you have no idea what it does, and then you'll have a problem. So, sorry.
All right, Chairman King.
Doug, I just wanted to say I appreciate your testimony, because we get a lot of testimony where people are only trying to fix their problem. And this committee is tasked with fixing a problem for 5.4 million kids, and the fact that in your position that you get it, that you're like, not everything is great for me, but the effort is so good. I'm for this bill. I mean, it's really refreshing. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of Sunnyvale ISD, but also representing all the members of TASA, and I will tell you that what we have to do collectively, school leaders, is we have to get behind the effort of this committee and the chamber of moving school finance reform forward. It's again, it's the right thing for them. I called my board president before I came here, and I said, and he and I have been together a while, but I said, all right, Brad, we're not going to get as much as some of the neighbors, but I'm going to say we need to do this. And he said, go get them, and that's his as well. And I'm looking at a lot of past board members. You guys know that I wouldn't come down here and say that if I didn't have his backing. So, yeah.
We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Dutton.
Yeah, I join Representative King in thanking you for that. But I was thinking about something else, more of a comment than a question. One of the things about the GT programs is that the premise that underlies it is that we ought to teach kids based on having them, based on achievement level of those groups of kids rather than their age, for example. And I was wondering why we don't do that all the way through the system.
That's a question that I would tell you deserves a lot of consideration. When you talk about what's the most important thing in relation to a student is not the date the student was manufactured,
yeah, right.
but the learning level and the abilities of those kids, and that's a philosophical question that should be addressed by school districts.
Because I think it would help teachers too tremendously, because trying to teach, and this is one of the things the GT program points out, is that the teacher can teach at the same level, whereas not having kids together based on their competencies, she has to go all over the place, and somebody gets ignored, and somebody gets, never gets the attention. And from what I hear from some teachers is that instructional coaches at the schools demand that you be at a certain place in the whole school plan for that classroom, as opposed to trying to develop lesson plans based on where the student is. And so that bothered me, but I understood why that happened, because we tend to group them by age rather than abilities.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Completely.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Justin Vaughter, and you'll be followed by Richard Senna.
Afternoon, Justin Vaughter at 4. Is that correct?
Say it again into the mic, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Justin Vaughter at 4.
Okay.
The House Bill 3. Okay, well, I want to say, first of all, good afternoon, and a huge thank you, first of all, for what you've done with House Bill 3, but also the level of questions you're asking. I mean that with all sincerity. This has been incredible. You've thought about it. You've debated about it, right? You've obviously articulated it very clearly. So I'm here today. I wear a lot of different hats, a lot of unique hats, but I'm a parent of a gifted student. I've been a gifted teacher. I've served at Region 10 as a gifted specialist, gifted researcher with University of North Texas. So what I want to do is I want to provide, obviously, like a sense of support for you if you have questions, and as I'm hearing the testimonies. And just very quickly, I want to unpack a few misconceptions like that I've been hearing so far. One in particular is that a gifted kid is just one myopic kind of kid. And what's really cool is that in the state of Texas, we have this huge, broad definition for gifted and talented. So this goes to your earlier point, sir, which is when we measure a gifted student, we look at ability, right, this raw ability that they have. Do they have the potential to do mathematics, even if they're not doing mathematics? On the other hand, we also have a kid who is performing in mathematics. But then in the definition, we have all 4 core areas. We also add in leadership, and we add in creativity. So the state definition for gifted and talented allows 16 to 18 plus different ways to be identified for gifted and talented. So that's one way. Another one misconception is that's one type of program. It's not. Representative Huberty, you talked about that earlier, sir, is that it's a broad spectrum ranging from K through 12. So the same coordinators that are ordering tests to identify kids from poverty for these programs are also ordering AP tests. And that moves me to the last part, which is about the equity part. These kids will not be fine without funding, and I can talk about that as a former regional representative. I've seen the way that money has flown in and out for testing. And I will say that the new Texas state plan, which is currently being reviewed and is up for adoption by the state board in April, moves and has some amazing measures in equity, especially concerning twice exceptionality, concerning poverty. They want the district GT population to represent the actual population. And so they've put that in there. And so my ask is this, is that we preserve the allotment to allow for these pieces to happen.
All right, that was right on the dot. Members, any questions? All right, thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
All right. Richard Senna, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Patty Quincy.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rich Senna, and I'm a trustee with Bernie Independent School District, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and share my thoughts today. I want to express support for House Bill 3 for a variety of reasons. Number one, it shows the House is very strongly committed to supporting public education. That's number one. Number two, it includes a variety of strategies to help student achievement, particularly in the area of reading, whether it's third grade, whether it's pre-K, whether it's dyslexic. It's just progress, which helps future academic success. Offers some simplification for an extremely complex system, and simplification is any kind of progress in that area is always good, particularly resulting in a very needed increase for the basic allotment. Very much appreciated in that area. A meaningful reduction in Chapter 41, which has had a negative impact on a number of Robin Hood districts, some of whom, after paying their recapture, have significantly less money per student than the state average. So that's a welcome relief, as well as allowing all districts, whether it's 41 or 42, some of which cover hundreds and hundreds of square miles, to participate in the transportation allotment. So we appreciate that. And overall, just giving districts the flexibility they need to make decisions for their districts, whether it's increasing teacher pay or reducing class sizes, both are which priorities in my district. I can tell you that is reducing those class sizes, particularly at the secondary level, as well as teacher pay, because we tend to lag behind neighboring districts. So overall, I think there's a lot of good things in the bill. You can argue for perfection, but you should never let perfection get in the way of very good. And I think most people feel this is a very good bill. If there's any way to improve it in the future, the tax relief is great. With the 4-cent reduction, I would love to see ways we could figure out new sources of revenue, be it a moderate broadening of the sales tax or what have you, to allow for future reduction in the tax rates, because this is good in the short term in this session, but then there'll be, of course, pressure in future sessions to say, what can we do to reduce the tax rate? And that's basically it. So I appreciate, once again, the opportunity to share thoughts.
Thank you very much, Chairman Huberty.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. You brought up something, and I didn't talk about it because I don't want to confuse pieces of legislation, but I would encourage people to look at what happened on Friday. There were several pieces of legislation filed, one of which was an HJR with enabling legislation that considers a tax swap. And 25% of that would go towards what we would consider maybe an educator allotment for sustainability purposes and ongoing tax relief as we go forward. So we'll be having that discussion here fairly shortly, and I think there's other bills that are out there that people have filed specifically about revenue generations that are going to be running through Chairman Burrow's committee that he's been working on that are pretty interesting and exciting, and I'm fairly confident that as we go forward, I think there'll be some positive things for us to be talking about on that as we go forward. So I encourage those of people that haven't seen them, but there's several HGRs that were filed on Friday dealing with this issue. The other big one was the issue that we talked about with the GLO, and I know Representative King actually has a bill to transfer the investment policy related to that, but we have another policy idea that came out that said that at the time Commissioner Bush told us that he was limited to $300 million a year for the ASF, and so we have a bill that actually increases that to $600 million a year. So I think there's many ideas that have come up, so I wanted to address that since you brought it up.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
All right. Patty Quincy. And you'll be followed by Kate Greer. Hi there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Patty Quincy, and I'm the Legislative Counsel for the Texas chapter of the American Federation of Teachers. We are very enthusiastic about the infusion of $6.3 billion into our public schools over the next biennium, and we very much support the Chairman's efforts to update the school finance formulas. We are very glad to see that high-quality full-day pre-K is included because we know very well that that's a critical foundation for student learning. However, we are deeply concerned about the role of educators in HB 3 as the primary pay provisions are performance-based. While AFT supports increasing the minimum salary schedule, the vast majority of educators would not benefit. And also, Texas teachers are already $7,000 below the national average for teacher salaries. So we would request that the legislature remove the merit pay provisions and direct some of the additional revenues flowing through the formulas as funding for raises for all public education employees. HB 3 leaves numerous questions about how to operate the teacher performance system and how specifically teachers would be measured. Part of our opposition to the merit pay system is a potential over-reliance on the STAR test, an exam that has not been determined to be valid and reliable for determining a teacher's true influence on a student. While Texas AFT would prefer to strike the merit pay provision altogether, educators would prefer would be far more comfortable if we had some kind of a provision in HB 3 that included a safeguard to specifically forbid the use of STAR tests in compensation decisions. And while the STAR is not specifically mentioned in the bill, it's the most obvious mechanism to use that the state could use to compare educators on a statewide basis. And an example of where we see the overuse of this STAR test is in the teacher designation system section that refers to the growth of students' performance over multiple years. To us, that signals the use of very controversial value-added methodology, which is very difficult for teachers to understand why one educator might get a stipend and another doesn't. Again, the merit-based pay scales also allow too much overuse of the STAR test. This requires districts to set up performance tiers, and again, we wonder how would a district be able to do that to compare educator to educator without using standardized testing. And I also want to point out that school districts have hewed to schedules based on years of experience and sometimes even educational levels as long as teachers maintain their minimum years in their salary schedule. However, the schedule here in HB 3 would not include or not be required to include factors based on experience. So what that signals to us is that maybe hard work and experience don't matter as much, and that's kind of troubling. It also includes student perception surveys for grades 3 and above, and these surveys lack objectivity and are not based on observable job-related criteria, which is required in Section 21.351 of the Texas Education Code. And evidence shows and research shows that students are more likely to hold their teachers in high regard in the elementary levels versus high school. We also seen research that shows that women and minority teachers tend to be rated lower than white and male teachers. And additionally, this type of evaluation would be very different in a small town where folks know their teachers very intimately, see them at church, in the grocery store, whereas in a large urban district, you would have some probably different results. And lastly, we are very concerned with the tremendous amount of new authority granted to the unelected Commissioner of Education. And that concludes my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. We look forward to continuing to work on this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes. Members, any questions? Chairman King.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand your concerns. One thing I would like to address, the bill specifically doesn't mention the STAR test because the plan is to allow each district to submit their own criteria for the teacher. Now, if your school board and your school district chooses to use the STAR test as part of their plan, that's a local decision. The state is saying, we don't want you to. We absolutely don't want you to. The thought is to allow a district to submit a plan, a lot like we did District of Innovation.
Right.
You submit a plan generated at the local level, because what's accountability and what is growth, rather, in Canadian Texas, where I live, may not be the same as it is in Houston. Right. So we want school districts. This is largely about local control. And that was something that we insisted on when we got the recommendations out, is there's not a one-size-fits-all. And I can tell you right now, just from legislative intent, the intent to leave it vague like that was to give back local control and not allow the Commissioner of Education to determine who gets the stipend based on the STAR testing. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I guess along those reasonings, that's why would feel more comfortable if there was a state-level prohibition against the use of the STAR test.
And I have no problem with putting that in there.
Great, thank you.
This is about local. This to me is about local control and sustainability and recruitment and retention of our best teachers in our most underserved areas. How we get there, we can skin that cat a lot of ways. I don't want the STAR test to be part of this, and I want it to be sustainable, and that's why we're putting it in statute.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
Representative Tellerico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify, your concern is purely with STAR being used as part of the evaluation system. You don't have a problem with an evaluation system that's tied to compensation that's based on classroom observation or some kind of community feedback, whether student or parent?
No, but I think it's important to realize that we need reasonable pay before we can talk about merit pay. And teachers very much feel, teachers are, you've heard from them, in the past couple of weeks, that teachers are facing health care costs that they never thought, would cut into their ability to pay for their rent or their food. So, teachers are really overwhelmed, but not just teachers, all school employees are really feeling the burn from lack of raises and increasing health care costs.
Okay, but a merit pay.
No, in fact, we have local, some of our locals, such as Austin ISD, has created these locally developed systems with a lot of teacher buy-in, and they have worked well.
And so an AFT is not opposed to this?
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Hubert.
Yeah, just maybe comments. I don't think these are questions. We had your group in along with the other teacher groups yesterday to talk about this, and we're trying to figure out kind of where do we land on it. And we had heard from the teacher groups and groups that were out there about the third grading allotment, and we didn't even have the bill written, and you guys came in and basically told me you hated it. And so what we did is we pulled it out and took the $400 million and took that out too. And so what I would encourage you to do, because we're just not going to take this and go stick it into the bill. We'll just take it out and we'll use it, it'll go someplace else. So you have an opportunity now to be able to be collaborative, work together. And we had everybody in the office, and I think they're going to be able to try to do that. I've read some of the things that your leadership has said about the legislature in particular. We haven't responded the same way. We're trying to be helpful. In fact, this House and this committee has been very beneficial. So I'm a little disappointed you're just on the bill, and I'll tell you why. Because last session I went actually and looked it back up, and I think last legislative session with the $1.8 billion that we put into the system, that you were for the bill at that particular time. And now we're putting $6.3 billion into the system, and you're not for it. So I would encourage you to make sure that as we continue to proceed and work collaboratively together, that's very important to us. In addition, I think I talked about this, but I want to be very clear so you understand this. We recognize that it's critical that we take care of our teachers, but treat them as professionals as we go along. I've got a lot of teacher friends that are in the system as well. So when we talk about we're going to deal with how do we come together with where we want to be, but we're taking it from the different perspective, which is that we have to deal with the active care, we have to deal with the pension program, we have to deal with it. But there's only a certain amount of money that's available in the system today. And so as we continue to work and be collaborative together, it just, obviously we do everything we can. I find it alarming to me that last session 1.8, you guys were for it. And I was the one that fought against many things that you didn't like that were very, very bad, and my committee members that did that. And this session, you're not for spending $6.3 billion for our children. And I guess the question is, when we think about this as we go forward, the majority of money that's spent in schools is spent where? Where do you think it's spent?
On instruction.
Instruction. On teachers. Mm-hmm. And so the question becomes, you heard superintendents are going to be able to make their own flexible decisions, mm-hmm. which is what our plan is. The teachers don't work for me. They don't work for this committee, and they don't work for the legislature. They work for the independent school district that has elected board members as we go. So let's continue to work together and come up with some ideas and compromises. I'd just encourage you and we will do this, and I've told my members this, is that we're going to be polite and courteous as we go forward through this process to try to make sure that we don't lose tempers and things of that nature. And it's helpful to make sure that your leadership treats us with the same courtesy and level of respect as we go forward. I think we would all appreciate that as we continue to work on your behalf, because we are fighting really hard.
I realize that, sir.
To help you guys and to help the children. And ultimately, we're focusing on 5.4 million children, mm-hmm. recognizing 100% that the professional teachers and counselors and librarians and everybody else that's part of this system is going to benefit from any of these changes that we do. And the other people we got to think about here is the taxpayers, because we got taxpayers that are getting taxed out of their homes, and we've got to reform that system as part of it. And the governor's made that very important, so has the speaker. And so there's some other things as we go along I think are going to be important. So we're going to try and balance as best we can.
Thank you. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify that we are very grateful for the $6.3 billion. It is but for the merit pay element in this bill that we would be for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members, any other questions? All right. We're going to bring up a duo, Kate Greer and Eric Ban. And you will be followed by Marisa Bailey.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kate Greer. I am here representing the Commit Partnership, testifying in favor of House Bill 3. Commit is a Dallas-based education nonprofit that is working to ensure Texas students all receive an excellent and equitable education that prepares them for success in college and career. And we just want to thank you guys for your work on HB 3. It really is an excellent step toward a school finance system that addresses today's problems and opportunities. We especially appreciate the framework and the college, career, and military readiness space, and we would welcome opportunities to strengthen this framework moving forward, including requiring each school board to set 5-year goals on college, career, and military readiness, FAFSA and TAFSA completion, and student attainment of higher education, career certificates, or the military. We'd also request that you consider requiring some of the new funding allocated in the basic allotment fund post-secondary access advisors, aligning with national standards for student counselor ratios, so 250 to 1 for majority economically disadvantaged schools and 500 to 1 for non-majority economically disadvantaged schools. The Commit Partnership believes in these changes for a few reasons. First, Texas trails the national average in FAFSA completion by 25%. we're behind other high poverty states like Louisiana and Tennessee, and these states have enacted statewide policies to ensure that we're driving post-secondary access. Second, Texas has the 4th lowest community college tuition rate in the country, roughly half the average Pell Grant. And when Pell Grant funding is captured, 13th and 14th grades are tuition free for every low-income student in Texas. Unfortunately, only 1 in 2 low-income Texas graduates currently accesses post-secondary education, and only 1 in 7 obtains a 2 or 4 year degree 6 years following their graduation. Tens of thousands of low-income students are not accessing post-secondary education each year because they don't understand how affordable furthering their education can be. The state should place higher emphasis on post-secondary readiness and access. It's our hope that with the substantial resources being invested in HB3 via the basic allotment, that high schools will now have the resources to adequately support our students in the pivotal transition. Thank you.
Members, any questions? All right.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Huberty and members of the committee. My name is Eric Ban. I'm the Managing Director of the Dallas County Promise at the Commit Partnership. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 3. I want to thank you for providing the framework for college, career, and military readiness, and thank you for the provision for providing a powerful equity tool in reimbursement on ACT and SAT all-day school day testing for students that have proven to be powerful equity levers across other states. I'd like to share my experience leading the Dallas County Promise, and I hope I could provide some thought and help in potentially strengthening the CCMR framework. The Promise really ensures a free college tuition path for Dallas County students, starting in one of the community colleges in partnership with universities with enhanced wraparound services. We're provided by the vision and leadership of the Dallas County Community College Foundation. Dallas County, and a reality, is we educate 10% of Texas and 1% of the nation. 3 out of 4 of our students are economically disadvantaged. 1 in 10 of our 8th grade economically disadvantaged students will earn a college degree 6 years after high school completion. And then we only put 57% of our students currently in post-secondary, and only 28% of those students complete throughout Dallas County. So we need to really move from economic opportunity for some to equity and outcomes in college and economic opportunity for all. Dallas, about 5 years ago, launched many initiatives, including the strength of the Early College and P-TECH initiative at scale. So we're excited that next year we're going to see about a quarter of our students really pursuing the associate degree completion before high school completion. The Promise launched last year in 2017 across 31 of our highest poverty high schools, a cohort larger than 8 U.S. states. Our FAFSA completion was up 7%, $3 million new dollars to Dallas County from federal funding. Enrollment was up 35% in 1 year at the community colleges, and 30% in our only public university, UNT Dallas, in the city limits of Dallas. Our retention from fall to spring is up 12%. Next year, we're going to be across 11 districts, 57 high schools, 22,000 high school seniors, and we'll be larger than 17 U.S. states, as well as supporting Houston, Tarrant County, and San Antonio, and a number of other regions of Texas in developing their Promise initiatives. So just kind of things to share in emphasizing Kate's recommendations. Goal setting is important.
I'm pointing at the light.
Oh, gotcha.
The red light.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you. Just echoing Kate's recommendations.
I'll ask a question.
Lifeline.
There you go. There's your lifeline. So obviously, as we go through this, I know that in talking with Todd and some concerns about, as we talked about the CCMR and those kind of recommendations, have you provided that feedback to us yet? You plan on it? I mean, I'm assuming you plan on it. I mean, but you read it. I mean, I went through it. On page 145, it talks about the parameters associated with that. I mean, one of the issues that we felt was important is to get the data over the next 2-year period of time, so that we can identify what that is as we go forward. We know that that's important from an outcome perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then really create the program. So, it's obviously a $400 million cost, roughly, is what we anticipated it to be for the biennium, which obviously we use for other things. You take, if you want to put it in, then we got to take it from somewhere else as we go forward, right? So
Sure.
help me understand, exactly what you're looking for.
I think our recommendation is really to ensure that the activities and the investment and the new dollars are spent on things that make a difference. So FAFSA completion, if you look at Dallas ISD, students who complete the FAFSA, 75% chance they're going to show up in higher education. Those who do not, 25% chance. So those activities in the high school require support and resources to help families and kids, particularly first generation.
I'm going to ask a question about that. So one of the concerns that's been raised, I understand the spirit of that idea. One of the concerns that's been raised in case studies from other states that do that is that it has some unintended consequences on immigrant students, on undocumented students, and students who are citizens but of undocumented parents, because they obviously don't have all the paperwork or can't check all the boxes. And so what's your response to those criticisms, and do we have workarounds for them?
We're developing workarounds in terms of the undocumented students. I think on FAFSA completion, your question is undocumented students only, or undocumented students and FAFSA completions?
Well, both, and also citizen students with undocumented parents or one undocumented parent.
Yeah, I agree with you that we need to be very sensitive and think carefully about the undocumented.
But you're already doing it in Dallas.
We're already doing it in Dallas.
Right. And so what's that experience been like?
There's a lot of trust building required in those communities, which are coming out of those high schools, in terms of those high school leaders and community leaders working together. Our promise includes undocumented students. Most promises across the country do not. Undocumented students must complete the TASFA, and there's just a lot of community development and community building that takes place to help support that activity.
But I guess my question is, on a policy level, have you solved it, or are you still convincing some that it's okay, and how does that correspond with, let's say, something that's compulsory?
Yeah.
And the effect that a compulsory requirement has versus an option or making it available.
The compulsory requirement, as we've learned from Louisiana, and speaking to the Louisiana State Superintendent, high school requirement, but with vehicles for parents to opt out and schools to use a hardship opt-out, has provided the vehicles necessary to mitigate those unintended consequences, and also increase in 1 year 20 percentage points of financial aid submission.
I think a lot of us would be interested to see how that works out. I don't question the spirit of it at all. It's the mechanics that we're concerned with. All right, thank you.
We finish up. So, okay, so figure that out. That we did not put it in the bill. There were some concerns about that. We have the language drafted. There was some legitimate concerns about that.
Sure.
For a variety of reasons, but I'm not going to get into it. But it's just, Representative Bernal and some of his colleagues are going to be very interested in what that language looks like to make sure that it's clearly opt-in. It's not, we're not looking for gotcha things or anything else. We're trying to help these kids, right?
Yep.
That's number one. Number two, on the career college military readiness aspect of it, while it's not as robust as perhaps we originally had anticipated it being and tying the money directly to it, we can do some outcomes-based solutions related to where that's at, and set expectations so that we can set this up for the future. So my comment and point to you would be, you got about the end of the week to get us some language.
Great. Well, thank you.
No, did they have it already? Yeah, you already gave us stuff. Kate was going to answer the question for you, so you didn't know what the hell you were talking about. So,
I was just going to clarify that there is language as far as asking school boards to set goals on those, and so not necessarily FAFSA as a graduation requirement. We understand that's other legislation, but having those goals, which Amy's nodding knowingly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll work through that. Clearly, obviously, my staff is not telling me what the heck's going on, so that's fine. So we'll work through that, and we'll land in a soft place about that. I think that's important. The other piece, and I know this was a big thing on commit's issue, was the third grade reading allotments, which we've talked about, right? And so we pulled that out at this point because of the amount of pushback and feedback we've heard, which I think is really kind of interesting in that I think there certainly are teachers in schools that would be willing to participate in those programs and be rewarded and be treated as professionals along the way. We just can't seem to figure out, because every time we do it, we throw up whatever mechanism that would create this ability. But I think we heard now the big issue is with STAR is that, well, it's just not. We can't count on it. It doesn't work. It's not right. It doesn't test anything. But you look at NAEP scores, it's the same thing. I mean, we're not performing anywhere, and that's that's pretty standardized, and that tests it, the right way. So we can talk about that as well. We do require school districts to establish goals. So on that. So let's talk about that as we go forward. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. Didn't she already go?
No.
Okay.
She was next.
All right, Marissa Bailey, and you'll be followed by Michael Inosa. I'll be right back.
Good afternoon, Chairman Huberty and members of the committee. My name is Marissa Bailey, and I'm principal at Lakeview Centennial High School in Garland ISD, or as we refer, Garland, USA. Thank you for your work on House Bill 3, and we are in great support of the work that you have done. We appreciate the thoughtfulness on including a college and career military readiness framework and would welcome opportunities to strengthen these provisions with including dedicated funds for college access and success for all. With additional funds in the basic allotment, I'm encouraged at the opportunity to provide resources that we involve to meet the demands of our community and economy and powerfully serve our families. Garland is almost a mirror image of the demographics of the state of Texas, where 6 out of 10 of our students are economically disadvantaged. At Lakeview Centennial High School, we have focused on college completion and aligned the needs of our economy, and we believe that it is imperative for the success of our students after they leave our campus and our support. Garland USA is committed to College for All model where every student completes financial aid, demonstrates maximum growth on SAT tools, does not require college remediation, and earns a minimum of 12 transferable college credits. They select a career path and experience work-based learning with industry certifications, and they enroll in a post-secondary program or military-aligned economic opportunities. Despite a high undocumented student population and over 60% of our student population being economically disadvantaged, we at Lakeview have ended up with over 70% FAFSA completion last year, almost 20 points higher than the state of Texas. And we place 69% of our students and graduates in college prepared to succeed. We graduate students from our early college on an accelerated path to bachelor's degrees, and we at Lakeview Centennial and Garland USA are the new reality in Dallas, a place where our high schools and colleges converge with our businesses to partner powerfully to serve our students. I'm proud to say I'm a product of Garland USA, and I have served all 22 years of my career in the Garland School District. It is my passion to serve my students and provide every resource available for their success and their futures. Again, thank you for your attention and focus on this work. We are leading the high schools and communities of the future in Texas, and we appreciate your work to ensure we invest in our most powerful resource, our students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions, members? You mentioned the FAFSA thing, and you heard what Representative Bernal said earlier. Give me your percentage again.
Last year, we had 70% of our students complete.
And how have you dealt with the issue that he spoke about?
We do a lot of speaking with our parents who may be undocumented one-on-one. We work with our students individually in those cases, and we try to establish that trust that Mr. Band spoke about so that we can let them know that they have places to go after they leave our high school and be successful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hinojosa, next followed by Gianna Ortiz.
Michael Hinojosa, Superintendent, Dallas ISD, again and still, and I am testifying in favor of House Bill 3. First of all, one of my favorite sayings is that people who say things can't get done get interrupted by people who are doing them. Yes. And this work is so hard and so monumental, and the amount of work that I mentioned last time that was put in to make this plan come forward is really transformational. And my favorite singer, Drake, y'all talk about Texas plan. My favorite singer, Drake, talks about God's plan. So I think this is God's plan. So first of all, the reason it is so is that you're focusing on the students. A lot of the things that you've added money for are for at-risk students, for students of generational poverty, for pre-K students, for dual language students. That language is embedded all throughout the bill. Everything that you've done is really help focus on getting all of the students to college and career readiness, knowing that it'll take another decade after you've done all this work to make it work. Also, what I also appreciate is the flexibility. Let me tell you, hopefully I'll be back here 2 years from now, because our elementary schools are doing well because of pre-K. Our high schools are doing pretty well because of the P-TECH. But our last frontier is the middle schools. And I have proposed to the board a $10 million fiscal note to start addressing our middle schools. We have 4 IR schools, 2 of them are middle schools. Under the state accountability, most of our middle schools are Cs, and we're not satisfied with Cs. And by the way, we can't spend that money unless we spend that money on more teachers, so that we can have true pods. So by giving us that flexibility, we're going to hire more teachers and pay them more money to make it happen. So if that happened under the Senate plan, I would get $50 million and I would just pass it through. And I couldn't fund the middle school initiative. We also have career institutes that you're going to hear about in 2 years, where we can get our kids high-wage jobs by training them through these opportunities. Also, I was here last time. I had a number in mind for the basic allotment. You guys exceeded my expectations. There was no way in my wildest dreams I ever thought that the basic allotment would rise to the number that it has, because of all the complex things you had to do with things such as the GT allotment. By the way, I could not keep my job if I didn't take care of services for talented and gifted students.
I'm going to stop you because you're out of time, but I'm sure somebody's going to ask you some questions as we go forward. And Representative Meyer has a question for you.
Again, Dr. Hinojosa, thank you for being here, and as one of my superintendents, please continue. That's my question. Is
well,
that good?
And the main reason that I'm here is that I am for wholeheartedly the teacher quality allotment. And by the way, it is optional. If you don't want to play, you don't have to participate. But you can make this optional for great teachers to get more money. That's the main reason I'm here. And I had a meeting of superintendents, and 30 superintendents showed up last week to figure out how to make this work, should this legislation go through. So there's an appetite out there I had rural, suburban, and urban districts that came to our presentation about how to make this allotment work. We can actually take care of all employees by the plan that you have laid out. We can't spend all this money. We don't spend a lot on teachers, but we also have counselors, nurses, librarians, assistant principals, payroll clerks. We have 20,000 employees in Dallas ISD. We run 2 payrolls every month. We need to be able to take care of those payroll clerks. Otherwise, if it was all restricted, we couldn't take care of the operations that we have. There's one glitch, but I'm very grateful, and that's the optional homestead exemption that exists and that's going away, with some other issues that was kind of gone through for Chapter 41 districts. Any consideration on that would be great, but I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. This is tremendous legislation. I'm very proud of it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
So, thank you, Doctor. I mean, your district is like the poster child. I mean, Houston's very similar. Houston actually does a little better, but I mean, your community voted for a tax increase recently to pay your teachers, right?
Yes, sir.
And to incentivize your teachers. So under current law, you'd be at $1.17, and your recapture would be $188 million.
Correct.
Okay. Under House Bill 3 and the Texas plan, your tax rate would be $1.09. Your recapture would go to $15 million. And you'd get an additional $96 million to take care of your teachers and staff and do whatever all the other creative things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so you as a superintendent heard about, we've heard from the variety of different representations, whether it's teacher groups and things of that nature. I think your district has been one of the leading edges, and if I remember correctly, one of the things you did related to your incentive pay was like you needed $18 million or something to continue that. And you weren't sure you were going to be able to do it, but it was all functioning based on this TRE. So the voters in that community said, yes, we're willing to pay for this.
That is accurate.
And you funded those increases in those pay for those teachers. And remind us again, how many on campuses did you have 4 years ago that were IR?
We had 43 campuses that were improvement required 4 years ago. We're down to 4 now.
Down to 4, and you can plan on getting off of those this year, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's because you took the investment and put it in professional educators and counselors and everybody else, but put them into those campuses, right?
Absolutely. We took that money, and by the way, our other employees didn't get raises for 3 years, so we could fund the teacher fund. And then also, another piece of the teacher fund is the ACE program, where you take high poverty schools and ramp them up significantly, but it took a lot of dollars. We now have over 300 teachers in Dallas making over $70,000. And the needle keeps moving to the right. We had a targeted distribution only because we couldn't afford it. Now that with this plan and our taxpayers, we'll get a whole lot more teachers over $70,000 in the next couple of years when we're back here in 2 years to testify as the results of this legislation.
Excellent. Doctor, you've done great work. Thank you for always being supportive of us. Appreciate it. Gianna Ortiz, then followed by Scott Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gianna Ortiz, and I'm here on behalf of NEA Dallas, the local affiliate of the Texas State Teachers Association. I want to thank you all for the work you have done toward directing more money to public education. I'm here to share with you a little bit about my client's experience with TEI, the Dallas ISD Teacher Appraisal and Merit System.
Ms. Ortiz, I don't mean to interrupt you, but are you for, against, or on the bill?
On the bill, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The Dallas ISD Teacher Appraisal and Merit Pay structure from which parts of HB 3 have been modeled. By way of background, I have an elementary education degree here from UT Austin. I taught bilingual kindergarten and third grade in Galveston ISD before attending law school. It is my great privilege to now represent educators and school employees across the state, including Dallas. Since the implementation of TEI, I have advocated for well over 100 teachers regarding issues with that system. My clients include teachers that are rated and labeled as proficient, as well as those labeled as distinguished under the TEI system. These are good teachers. In my client's experience, the TEI has major flaws. Even those who initially supported the idea of work hard, get paid well, have realized that most teachers by design cannot attain the, quote, merit pay and are trapped by the ratings. Time does not permit me to describe all of my clients' experiences and concerns with TEI, but very good teachers on the bubble of reaching higher evaluation ratings cannot because of budget metrics. The formulas used to calculate the ratings are not shared with the teachers so that they can verify the reliability and the validity of those scores. The use of student surveys is problematic. My clients believe, just as you believe, that every student deserves a highly effective teacher in their classroom. TSTA does not support merit-based pay on a statewide level. The concerns raised by its members in DISD illustrate why. Every teacher and school employee deserves higher pay. I don't think any of you would disagree with that. But the evaluation and merit-based pay system proposed in this bill will only serve to leave more teachers behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Members' questions? Yeah. Representative Meyer.
Ms. Ortiz, you testified that you all don't like the system. Do you have any suggestions on how it could be improved?
The merit-based pay allotment, I know that Lisa Fisher from TSTA is going to testify with some specific ideas about that, but directing more money to high-need campuses, as Dallas has done, there are a lot of exciting parts about TEI, including directing resources to campuses that need it and providing meaningful feedback to the teachers through the evaluation system. The problem occurs when the evaluation system then impacts compensation and when budget metrics keep the windows of people who can make additional money very small. I think that some easy ideas would be to give educators an allotment for school supplies. That's one idea, but I'm not the expert on that like you all are. I know that there are plenty of uses for that money, as we've heard about today.
Dr. Allen, yes, of course.
I heard you say that ratings are not shared.
Yes, Dr. Allen, thank you. So the cut point component scores used to create the teachers' evaluation scores are based on a few aspects. One is the teacher performance, like what would be the T-tests for other school districts, that component. The other component is student achievement test scores. Another component is the student survey. Those are the three components that are used to evaluate most teachers. And the underlying data used to come out with the component score is not shared with the teachers so that they can verify it. So value-added models are used to calculate those, as well as cut points in order to keep each teacher rating group within the budget metric. In other words, most of the teachers, 80% of the teachers in that district by design are proficient 1 or below. There are 3 other, higher paying, much higher paying evaluation ratings that the teachers can attain, but only 20% of those can fall into those metrics. And just like Ms. Reed, who sat here and talked about, my teachers and my friends and I talk about, is it any coincidence that we all just got 69 points and we could be making $10,000 more, but it's so strange that we are all stuck within the $65,000 range, which is a great rate of pay for what she seemed to be a newish teacher. That's a good rate of pay, but just like for her and her colleagues, 40% of the teachers are at a $56,000 rate right now and cannot bump into the next level, which is 60. And in order to verify that the data calculating their scores is reliable, they need to be able to see that data, which we cannot.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Tallarico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ortiz, I had 2 questions. I also just wanted to say I was a proud member of TSTA, so that's why I want to clarify exactly what the position of the organization is. You had problems with the way TEI was kind of operationalized in Dallas with transparency issues or not being fully funded. Is there a problem philosophically with the approach of using some of these different metrics to evaluate and compensate teachers? Or is it simply an issue of how it was put into practice?
I think that until the teachers are paid at a national average, then yes, TSTA would object to the use of those components in order to inform the compensation. As I mentioned, 80% of Dallas ISD's teachers under the current model make $56,000 or below. That is below the national average, and those are 20 years teachers, and those are 5-year teachers. So I think that the way that model is set up is objectionable.
So, just as a follow-up, so until our teachers are paid at the national average, TSTA's position is that we should just be paying based on seniority?
There's a need to incentivize teachers to stay in a school district. If 80% of the school district's teachers are capped at $56,000, then once they become 10th, 11th, 12th year teachers, there are surrounding districts right now in DFW that are going to immediately be able to show them more money and more money every year. So yes, and I think that there should be an incentive for the teachers to stick around because the campus and the students value from a teacher's experience. So not incentivizing a teacher to stay into the district beyond 11 or 12 years, yes, we believe, run counter to the student's interest.
Okay, last question. Your comments are mostly focused on the TEI program in Dallas and the ACE program in Dallas. Obviously, our bill is allowing districts to opt into a program where they create their own evaluation systems that possibly don't look like the Dallas model and don't include STAR or student achievement parts of the evaluation system. Is that something that the organization is still opposed to, or help me understand the difference between opposition to Dallas's TEI program and the model proposed in HB3?
As the chairman has noted, Dallas ISD right now is seen as the poster child in this initiative, and we believe that there are flaws, and the framework set up in the bill allows for those flaws to perpetuate and to grow statewide, and so that would be an objection.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Bernal.
Yeah. Just want to tease out a few things based on my conversations with, I guess, hundreds of folks now. The first is that I think the Representative Tellico asked an important point, which is there any version of this that people would be okay with? And it sounds like, for the most part, the answer is no, because I understand that in Dallas they used a forced distribution, right? And that's how you end up with all of these teachers on the bubble that couldn't get over the top because the model itself doesn't allow for it. I understand that. The superintendent said that it was done that way to control the cost of it, but I understand how that could be frustrating and really not a true measure. I get that. I also understand your point about taking care of everybody and trying to keep teachers in a certain district. Otherwise, other districts, competing districts, better funded districts nearby could poach them and take them away, right?
Yeah.
The one part of this that I've heard teacher groups say they're okay with, in theory and spirit, is this idea, is the inverse of that. And that is that despite our best efforts, teachers' best efforts, or lack thereof on both sides, we can't keep high-quality, experienced teachers at schools with tremendous challenges, where there's generational poverty, where they're hard to staff. In fact, TEA gave us a stat that explained that poor minority kids are most likely to have a sort of an abundance of brand new teachers, right? Which sort of, that sort of meeting need within experience. Is the use of that money to solve that problem, or help solve that problem, an acceptable use? That's my first question.
I think that stipends for high-need campuses are working throughout the state, and yeah, I think that is something that TSTA would support, but that's different than what would be called a, quote, merit-based
so then I have a second half, right? So yes, stipends to incent or to keep teachers at those high-need, failing campuses is acceptable. The second part of it is, do you agree that you would have to find a way to identify, and I'm not saying it's STAR at all, but you have to identify who the teachers are who are best suited for those campuses and those kids? And if that's the case, wouldn't that require some sort of evaluation system? I'm not calling it merit pay because I'm trying to, it's for these specific campuses. But this is, the reason I'm asking, this is the one part that people seem to say, this might be okay. And so I'm just walking through what that would look like. If we were to say, yes, the stipends are okay, but then we have to figure out who the teachers are that we're willing to give stipends to go to those campuses. Because this, like, solving this problem, like, this is why I came to the legislature, right? It's because it's older than my parents. So how do we do that?
I think two things. So TEI in particular changed the evaluation system. Texas, a couple of years ago, changed its evaluation system to the T-test. And both systems do endeavor to create more meaningful feedback and identify more specific areas of strength and growth for the teachers. And I think the entire purpose of an evaluation like that is to identify the teachers that are succeeding and those who need to do better. So I think we have that in place. And just to pile onto that,
T-test, you're saying?
T-test, or in Dallas, TEI, I mean, we have evaluation systems. That the entire purpose of that is to identify teachers who are doing a good job.
So, okay. I thought that part of the problem was evaluating teachers, but you're saying it's not the evaluation, it's how you pay them and what for, in light of the fact that they of course need more than they're getting across the board. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
To put it another way, the T-test, that's not a subject of concern for us right now. The TEI itself, for purposes of this hearing, is not a subject of concern.
And I want to be clear that the TEI or the elements of the TEI are not in the bill, and I think there'd be strong pushback if we tried to include that, so I want to be clear about that.
The student survey piece is in there, as an example. That there are bits of TEI in there.
Sure,
the student survey, though, is severable and separate
the STAR
from
part is not. And STAR is worth, 15-30% of the TEI.
Correct,
right?
But the teacher evaluation component of TEI, which
point.
severs out surveys and
Yes,
student achievement.
No, I understand. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for your time,
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions, Representative Bell?
Yes, but I just want to make sure. So, if stipends are part of this teacher quality program, and it was based upon the T-test to determine which exists today, whether or not these people were eligible for these additional funds that you're supporting. That's what I've heard. I just don't want to words in your mouth.
TSTA is against merit-based pay. So, quote, merit-based, performance-based pay. I don't think that that is something that TSTA is interested in talking about until the teachers are paid at the national average. So I do not think that we are supportive of the use of T-tests in order to inform teachers' compensation.
So, in other words, if we put teachers in a difficult campus and ask them to do a difficult job, you don't support paying them more money for stipends through this program, and then using the T-test to qualify those people that are affected.
As I read the bill, it does not limit the teacher designations to those who would go to high-needs campuses. I think an incentive or a stipend, just like to teach bilingual or to teach special education, high-need area, a stipend to go to a high-need campus is different from, and I don't read that in the bill. I read this to be a pay bump based on evaluation, including student surveys and test scores.
Right, and my only reason for the question is just to understand what we can do, because I think that's what the chairman laid out on the front end. Is what we don't like, what can we do to make the changes, and the purpose of the questioning is to find out how we can make this better. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
And so that's the purpose. I'm trying to understand how we can do this in the benefit of education.
Thank you.
No problem. Well, we appreciate your testimony, and I think I heard you loud and clear. I met with the TSTA groups, and they, as I said earlier in the day, when we had outcomes-based funding, everybody said they hate it, and I said, we haven't even seen the language yet. Yeah, but we just don't like it. I said, okay, well, you're going to lose the $400 million. So here's my challenge to you right now. There's about $100 million a year. It's going to go away. Figure out what kind of language you want, but don't stand up here and sit here and say we're just completely against it unless we get this. You got to figure out a way. I had everybody in the room, so let's work together on that as we go forward. And I know Lisa will maybe come and talk ideas and concepts and share them with us. That's fine. But when the third grade reading allotment went away, because I said, you know what, if that's just a fight and people just don't want it, and that, just so you know, it was $400 million that would have gone to teachers.
And I know that TSTA appreciates the opportunity to continue to work with you on something that we can all agree to.
And I want to say something else, which I think is interesting, which is the same thing I said to AFT, which is that last session when we had $1.8 billion going into the education bill, your group was supportive of our efforts at that particular time. We now have $6.3 billion, and you're not supportive of the bill at this particular time, and our hope is to get you to be supportive. But I think it's important for you to know as we go forward. We want to work with everybody as we go forward, but it's difficult. It's very hard for me to understand how we went from less than $2 billion that you were supportive. And by the way, this committee in the House, said we weren't going to do some things last legislative sessions that our counterparts wanted to do. And we stood with y'all on those particular issues. And so it's just alarming to me of what I've seen happening and the rhetoric that's going on. So I want us to be careful as we go forward, because we really do want to work with you. But, I think this committee is committed to providing the resources to the school districts. I mean, under a different plan that exists today, Dallas ISD, which you just said you represented, would end up with $50 million. Under this plan, there's $96 million, of which the majority goes to who?
The kids, the teachers, and the kids.
The teachers.
Yeah,
that's
ultimately
right.
The children, sure. Now, and we are very appreciative of the efforts of this entire committee to direct more money to public education. Very supportive.
Well, that's not what your thing says, but that's okay. We'll get there.
I should be listed as testifying on the bill, which is
you are. I understand that, but
Not
it just blows me away. So, but thank you for being here. Scott Murray, followed by Holly Davies. Hey, Scott.
Hey. Chairman Huberty, committee members, Scott Murray, Superintendent, Spring Branch ISD, and I'm honored to be here today to speak in favor of House Bill 3. I, along with members of my Board of Trustees, members of my community, have been engaged in the school finance conversation for many years. And today, our whole purpose is to say thank you, and that's exactly why I'm here. I wanted to paint a clear picture of what your decisions and what this bill might mean in a school district. So I'll lift up a couple of examples to share with you what this work could mean. So blended learning is spoken to in the bill. Students would have, in a blended learning environment, a more personalized experience. Students would be able to own their work more than they do today. Students would be engaged in a deeper level. Students would receive individualized attention from their teachers. We would see academic growth and opportunities for kids increase, and students would be more connected to their teachers in this type of environment. The pre-K allotment that's mentioned in the bill would provide more students with we would better equip more of our students for preparedness for a kindergarten through 12th grade experience and ultimately a post-secondary life of success. Opportunity gaps, academic gaps would continue to decrease with that healthy pre-K allotment. CTE funding would provide opportunities for middle school students that they do not have today. We would see stronger curriculum in 6th through 8th grade. We would also see more post-secondary experiences provided by kids at the middle school level. The EL weights that are mentioned would provide access to our EL students to stronger curriculum, and teachers would receive a higher level of professional development, and also would be able to strengthen the dual language programming that we provide to students. Reimbursements for post-secondary assessment would provide more of our high school students with opportunities to close that opportunity gap by leveraging the ACT, SAT experiences that they could take, and some of those kids aren't able to do so today because of funding. Reimbursement for National Board for Professional Teaching Standards would provide our teachers with a high-quality professional development experience, and we'd see benefit to that in our classrooms. Reducing recapture. The residents and Spring Branch ISD and other districts would see more of the dollars that they put forth in their property taxes benefit their local school district, and they would see a benefit to that. And finally, this bill supports local control, and our parents, our trustees, our community would feel like they have a higher level of decision-making as it relates to decisions that we make in Spring Branch ISD. And so finally, I say thank you on behalf of the students, on behalf of the teachers, the administrators, our trustees, and our entire community. Thank you for the significant amount of work that has gone into the creation of this bill. It's an honor to come before you today and simply say thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Members' questions? Two quick things. Did I read something recently that your board has, and you have decided to go and create an incentive, some sort of plan for that you're rolling out recently, or do I have that confused with Spring? What are you doing? You're doing something that's
We're leveraging some more District of Innovation flexibilities right now.
That's what it was. Okay.
Multiple.
Okay, that's what it was. And then obviously under you're actually one of the 3 school districts that was have been one of our problem childs, right? That you tax above your rent maximum rate. But
yes,
you're a recapture district.
Yes.
Your voters allowed you to go to $1.11, which that's a big deal.
We're at $1.09.
What, $1.09? Okay, thank you. And so, but you went up above and beyond what the golden ones would be. So you're having a significant amount. And I looked at your numbers under the current law. You'd have $98 million in recapture. Under the new law, you'd be at $50 million. You'd pick up $19 million or $600 a kid. So I'm assuming the $19 million that we would give to you, how much of a percentage of that $19 million do you believe is spent in the classroom, or spent, let's say, classroom, teachers, librarians, campus-based kind of stuff?
So about 87% of our budget is focused on personnel, and so a significant portion of that is focused on the classroom. And that remaining 13%, I mean, as a system, we really, our goals that we've established for ourselves as a system, our multiple measures really drive how we spend our dollars, and a significant portion of that money would be invested in kids. And the examples that I gave today, those are kid examples. And whether it's professional learning for teachers or specific things for students, those dollars are going to benefit the 35,000 kids that we serve every single day. That is our purpose, and that's how we invest our money.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Holly Davies, followed by Xavier de la Torre. Who's going to run that?
Hi there. Good afternoon. Chairman Huberty and members, my name is Holly Davies, and I am here representing the North Texas Commission, speaking for House Bill 3. I'm here today to thank you for your hard work that you've already done to bring real school finance reform to the state of Texas through House Bill 3. I would also like to thank Chairman Huberty, Vice Chairman Bernal, and Representative King for their diligence throughout the interim in crafting strategic, evidence-based recommendations through the Commission on Public School Finance that have guided this legislation. Admittedly, I'm not a funding formula expert or a finance expert, but rather I'm here to speak to the benefit House Bill 3 would bring to the business community. House Bill 3 is especially important in the eyes of the business community because these young Texans are our future workforce. The need for a high-skilled, talented, and capable workforce will just grow as our state attracts more business. If every young Texan has the opportunity to achieve her or his highest potential, think of the impact that will have on our economy. There is no question the ability to read by third grade is critically important for the long-term outcomes of our students and ultimately their workforce readiness. That is why I'm thrilled to see so much emphasis placed upon crucial benchmark throughout House Bill 3. Through the proposed third grade reading allotment, districts can expand their pre-K to offer a full day of high-quality instruction and ensure children enter kindergarten ready to learn. Providing districts the funding to serve students through additional summer instructional days will help mitigate the effects of summer learning loss. These strategies were chosen because they work. They have been studied and tested and shown to be our best bet at achieving the goal of 60% third grade reading proficiency by the year 2030. With such a focus on early literacy, I was hopeful to see outcomes-based funding for third grade reading included in the bill. We are thankful House Bill 3 has recognized the needs of our students in many ways, including through a significant increase to the basic allotment. In addition, we hope the discussions regarding outcomes-based funding will continue. There is added benefit to House Bill 3 in that it has the potential to tackle another key priority for our state,
Ms. Davies,
and that's property tax relief.
You can wrap up real quick. Tell us
Yes,
if there's
sir.
something you've missed telling us, but you're running a little late. Go ahead.
I will close and say I have faith in this process and in the leadership of this committee to enact meaningful reform to our public education system. Our young Texans and future Texas economy are depending on it. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Members, questions? Ms. Davis? Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
We appreciate it. Xavier de la Torre, and then over that, after that, Jennifer Overpeck, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Huberty, members of the committee. My name is Xavier de la Torre. I'm the Superintendent of Schools in the Ysleta Independent School District, 42,000 students in El Paso, Texas. I'm here representing both the Urban Council of Superintendents, made up of 9 large, diverse, and urban school districts throughout the state of Texas, including Austin, Aldine, Corpus Christi, El Paso, Fort Worth, Ysleta, San Antonio, that make up and serve and support 1 in 5 students who are English learners, students of color, and students who live in abject or generational poverty. We are here to support House Bill 3 and are very appreciative in your acceptance and understanding that our future economic prosperity, the economic development, and the national security that we'll enjoy as a nation really depends on our ability to reach students who have historically not had a good experience in our schools. Initially, somewhat approaching it with an abundance of caution, we were studying the impact of eliminating the cost of education index. You have more than, I think, made up for that elimination in your proposed increase of the basic allotment. We appreciate your recognition of certain student groups, including those groups who are socioeconomically disadvantaged and were served under compensatory education monies, students participating in dual language, students whose primary language is not English, who are either non-English proficient or limited English proficient, your investment in career tech ed, and finally those that perform the magic in the four corners of the classroom, our teachers and other educators. It's a well-written bill. I concur with Dr. Hinojosa. It is a game changer. It is probably the most meaningful legislation that I've experienced in the 32 years, both in California and in Texas, that has happened. It will allow us, I think, to rupture the membrane that has limited the experience and the success that many of our students who come from ethnic diverse backgrounds and economically recessed realities experience every year and every day in our schools.
Thank you,
So
Doctor.
thank you very much.
Yep. I think Mary Gonzalez would like to talk to you and say hello.
I would love to say hello to one of my superintendents. Hi, Dr. De La Torre. Thank you for coming all the way from El Paso. Did you drive or fly?
I flew. It was rather bumpy, and I understand it will be bumpy on the way back. And it's a 737.
Yeah, don't take a 737.
It is.
Sorry, Boeing.
And then apparently something's going on in town because hotels are going for $800 to $900 a night.
Yeah. Small little party.
Well, I'm happy to host you at my place, Dr. De La Torre. I mean,
thank you.
You're my friend. So I just want to say thank you for coming up here and thank you for advocating for kids in the district. And Ysleta does do well in the plan, and so thank you for that.
We're fortunate, and this will certainly help, and thank you all.
Any other questions? In looking, I just want to make sure that you, I mean, I know you understand it, but because I'm pretty sure she shared it with you, but let me make sure I got this right. About 37,000 kids in your district, majority poverty, right? What's the minority population of your kids?
82% socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Okay. So your tax rate's $1.17. Under current law, you'd get $77 million of M&O, $278 of state aid, and $355. Under
Yes,
the
sir.
new plan, your tax rate goes down to $1.09, which obviously your citizens would appreciate. So M&O goes 72. You go down to 309 under the new law, or 382, meaning you pick up $26,000 a student, or $26 million in the new plan.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming, and the same question I'm going to ask you as superintendent, as a percentage of money that's going to classrooms, $26 million is a lot of money
Yes, sir.
for your district. And we see I'm assuming the majority of that is going to be going to classrooms, librarians, counselors, things of that nature. As a percentage, could you talk about that?
82% or 82 cents of every dollar that we spent is spent on compensation, health and welfare benefits, and employees.
Okay, so let's round it down so we can do the simple math here for a second. But roughly about $20 million of that $26 million is going to go in touching a child, whether it's the teacher, the librarian, the counselor, the bus driver that picks them up in the morning. Everybody, we're talking. I mean, I'm assuming if this happens, your board is going to be giving pay raises and taking care of teachers. That's where the money's supposed to go.
Yes,
plus,
sir.
including, if I remember correctly, do you have full-day pre-K right now? I think
We
you
have
do.
full-day pre-K, yes.
So you're already paying for that. So we're going to give you the money to take care of that as well, and so you can use those resources for something else.
Correct. To take care of the other employees so that everybody understands and knows that they're valued, but the majority of that investment will go into people.
Right. And then on the gifted and talented side, I'm assuming you have a gifted and talented program for your kids.
We
right?
do.
And as a percentage, do you know off the top of your head how many?
About 6%.
About 6%. And so we give you 5. I'm assuming that extra 1% they get taught the same way that the other 5% get taught.
They certainly will, and we'll continue to have a dedicated coordinator.
And we put that money into the base allotment for you to make sure that it's there. And I'm sure you've looked at the bill and to make sure that you're going to get that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Doctor? Thank you. Be careful.
Thank you.
Be
I
careful
appreciate
going home. Jennifer Overpeck, followed by Justin Yancey. Hello.
Hello. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to be sitting here before you today. It is an absolute honor. I am a kindergarten teacher. I teach at Northside Elementary School, that is at McAndrew Elementary School, I'm sorry. I am here in front of you today to talk about the bill, House bill, that and the biggest thing is thank you so much for advocating
Jennifer,
for students.
Can I stop
yes,
you
sir.
real quick?
Go ahead.
Are you testifying on, for, or against?
I'm on. This is my first time doing this,
That's
so
a problem.
I'm on.
And I have you, it's okay, and I have you with AFT. Are you representing AFT or are you representing your
AFT and Northside.
And Northside. Okay, so we're going to have to fix that. So it says AFT, it just says AFT, so we want to make sure we get it right. So AFT
sorry.
and Northside. No, that's okay.
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to make sure we're getting it right. So
Yes, sir.
AFT and Northside. And you have your permission to make sure we fix that, to make sure it's okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
And My biggest thing with this bill is that I love the way y'all advocate for children. I love the way y'all are putting more money in for these kids, because right now, us teachers are their only voice. So to sit up here in this room and hear y'all speak so highly of really pushing education for kids, it makes me so proud to be a part of this. The other thing I wanted to really commend you on is collaboration. Collaboration is a huge word in education, especially for teachers, because we do that on a daily basis. And to hear y'all say that y'all collaborate as a team, y'all collaborate with everyone sitting in front of you, it makes me feel so confident in y'all that my job and my future is in y'all's hands. So thank you for that. Because in collaboration, we do it every day as educators. And we have something called PLC. It's called Professional Learning, Professional Learning Community. And what that is we look at, especially in kindergarten, they come in not knowing anything, to you have your high kids that come in already knowing letters and sounds, right? So we meet and we look at those growth measures. Okay, where are these kids at? What goals do we need to set for them? And what can we do to not only give enrichment, but intervention as well? So my only problem with this entire bill is that the collaborative piece is going to turn into competition and not collaboration with the performance-based pay. And I really think we need to focus on that collaboration piece, because that is the success of those students. That is where those students are going to grow, and those growth measures are going to show is in that collaboration piece. And I'm afraid that teachers are going to be not wanting to share their ideas because, oh, well, that teacher may benefit from my idea. And I don't want that to happen. I want us teachers to say, we're a team here, and we're going to do whatever we need to do to make sure that every child, our high kids, get enriched, because you should be doing GT in your classroom with your high kids. You should be enriching those kids every single day to make sure those growth measures are met with them. And we do that also as well in our student-led conferencing. So the students come up with their own goals and say, look, this is where I want to be. And you help guide them. I mean, they're 5. But still, to hear some of those GT kids say, I want to be reading chapter books in 6 months is incredible, because I have 3 that actually met their goal this year. And they're reading chapter books, and I'm so proud of them at 6 years old. So I'm sorry, I know my time's up. I just had to boast a little bit.
Before I have questions,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to need you to do me a favor, though. I'm going to need you to go back out and register for Northside as well.
Okay.
Okay? If you don't mind doing that for
Yes,
me.
sir.
To make sure that we get it all right.
Yes, sir.
And we'll do it, but, we'll work through this as we go forward. We might be able to change it internally, but I want to just be double 100%
Yes, sir.
clear to make sure it's done. Are there any questions for Jennifer? Yes, Mr. Tellerico.
Ms. Overpeck,
Yes, sir.
you said you teach kindergarten?
I've taught kinder, 1st, and 4th grade, yes, sir.
Got, and in Northside ISD?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the committee the difference between students who come to you in kindergarten who had been in a pre-K program and those who haven't?
Yes, sir. I didn't have time, but
No,
thank
that's
you for
okay.
that opportunity. So the pre-K, and that's one of the biggest things I'm so thankful y'all are having on the bill. Because the problem is I'll have kids come into my classroom, and we're not low socioeconomic. I mean, we're talking Dominion and Aqua Springs. Those houses sell for millions. And I still have kindergartners that don't even know how to write their name. They don't know any of the letters on the alphabet. And so to have that pre-K program, we could get those kids in and already start reading with them. And that would be tremendous, because then by the end of kindergarten, we could be doing writer's workshop with them, and it's those skills that they need to be so successful on the STAR test. So I think it is just immensely important, and I love the fact that y'all, are putting that in there.
So just because we have colleagues in the other chamber who are just proposing kind of a flat teacher pay raise, and ours has resources for districts to do that, but also providing for full-day pre-K. As an educator, as an early childhood educator, do you think that a school finance plan can really be complete if it doesn't include resources for full-day pre-K?
Well, for me, I do it because I love teaching. I put my whole paycheck into my classroom.
Yeah.
So as far as finance, I think that teachers are teachers because they love their job. And I greatly appreciate the pay and everything. But I think that's more of a question, because if it were up to me, I'd do my job without getting it paid at all. Because I love the growth of those kids. Like, that's my pay every day. To have a child come in, especially in kindergarten, and you don't know if they are special needs or not. You come in, it's like a blank canvas, and you have to figure out how to make a masterpiece out of it. But then by the end of the year, that masterpiece is done, and a child that came in not talking is now in that spec ed program and progressing, and his growth measures are tremendous. That's the pay for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm really equipped to answer that. I'm sorry.
No, you answered it beautifully,
Okay.
and I think our proposal is giving districts the resources to do both.
Yes,
Give you
yes,
a pay
sir.
raise and have full day pre-K.
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Yeah, I was just looking at your numbers for your school district, and I know you're not the CFO of the deal, but your tax rate goes down 4 cents, and your school district gets $57 million next year.
Yes, sir.
I'm pretty sure they're going to do what's right and put it where it belongs.
Oh, my
And
superintendent is phenomenal.
Yeah,
He's amazing.
And so Northside, they offer a full day pre-K right now, if I remember
They do,
right.
but not at all the schools.
Yeah, didn't you work there?
San Antonio ISD.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So very close to that, where that's at. Okay. Well, listen, if you want to work for free, I'll give you the human resources person in my office.
Yes.
And you come.
Actually, I would love to do that. I got
Yeah,
accepted at St. Mary's Law School, so I start in the fall.
There you go.
And so anything I can do for free, I have a bill coming up with Philip Cortez for
Okay.
bullying, anti-bullying for teachers.
yeah.
So I'm really enjoying this, and I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
appreciate the opportunity. And thank y'all for all y'all do, because
Yeah.
I know y'all put
Yeah.
your whole heart into this.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really shows me sitting in this room and hearing y'all talk and prepping, and the questions